Can Welcome to the special council meeting on Monday, the 20th of November, 2023. I shall just go through some housekeeping rules before we start. I'd like to remind members that under the council's multi-locations policy this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the council's website as soon as possible after the meeting. Can I also ask members, except for cabinet members and group leaders, that your mics and cameras are turned off until you are invited by myself to speak. Should you wish to speak, would you please indicate by raising the hand function on Teams. If this function ceases to work during the meeting, please indicate in the chat facility your wish to speak. With regard to voting on recommendations, if there is no dissent to a recommendation, I will accept the silence as agreement. Should a vote, however, be required, it is my intention that all members be asked individually for their vote. If during the meeting you have technical difficulties, please let the Democratic Services Officer know as soon as possible. Now let's begin. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, please. Councillor Carroll?
Councillors Russell Godfrey, Robert Fisher and Christine Cave.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, this is a special meeting, so it's difficult to everybody to attend. Councillor Stephen Williams not present tonight, sends apologies.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liz Burnett?
Councillor Naomi Marshall, C, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Agenda item 2, or the roll call and declarations of interest. I will now ask the Chief Executive to take the roll call and any declarations of interest and the nature of any interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. So when I do the roll call, if people can indicate if they've got any declaration of interest and also what the nature of that interest is when replying. So we'll start off by Councillor Ann Asprey, please.
Presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Julie Aviett,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gareth Ball,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Gillian Bruce,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Buckley,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Liz Burnett,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Samantha Campbell,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor George Carroll,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Charles Champion, Councillor Champion with us this evening?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see you. Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor Janice
Nothing
Charles,
to declare.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Millie Collins, Councillor Collins,
Present, nothing to declare.
thank you. Councillor Pamela Drake,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Vince Driscoll,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Anthony Ernest,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Chris Franks,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Stephen Haynes,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Howard Hamilton,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Sally Hanks,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor William Hennessy,
Present with nothing to declare.
Councillor Nick Hodges,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Hooper,
Bresennol a dim byd ddatgan.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Gwyn John,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Johnson,
Presennol a dim byd ddatgan.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Kevin Marney,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Michael Morgan,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Jane Norman,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Helen Payne,
Presennol and nothing to declare.
Councillor Elliot Penn,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Sandra Perks,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Perry, Councillor Perry with us this evening? Okay, I'll come back. Councillor Joanna Prothero,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianen,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Caris Stallard,
Yn bresennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Neil Thomas,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhys Thomas,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Eddie Williams,
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Wilson,
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Nicholas Wood,
Present and nothing to declare.
and I'll just go back one more time. Councillor Ian Perry, please.
Councillor Perry doesn't appear to be your Chief Executive.
Okay,
Can I-
thank you, Karen.
I-
Councillor Cowp, you've got your hand there.
Yeah, because you haven't called my name, I am here, and I have
Oh,
nothing
have I
to
not?
declare. No,
Oh, sincere apologies.
no harm done. I'm here, but and nothing to declare.
I don't know how that happened. Councillor Marianne Cowp, thank you very much for pointing that out to me.
No worries.
And noticed your presence. Thank you. That concludes the roll call, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Campbell, I see a hand up, and Councillor Perry.
I was
Councillor
just going
Campbell.
to say Councillor Perry's on his way. Apologies, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, I see.
I'm already here. Good evening.
Mayor, that Councillor Perry is now in the meeting. Councillor Perry, is that yourself? If you can just confirm that.
This is definitely me.
Thank you ever so much. Welcome. Okay, Mayor, thank you. That concludes the roll call.
Can we just check, Chief Executive, that Councillor Perry has no declarations of interest, please? Councillor Perry, do you have any declarations of interest?
Not even to the item about me now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is the reference from Cabinet 2nd of November 2023, the final draft of Vale of Glamorgan Council Self-Assessment Report 2022 to 2023. I'd like to hand over to the leader, Councillor Liz Burnett, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can just get my papers up on the screen. So yes, this is the final draft of Vale of Glamorgan Council Annual Self-Assessment, which has come to us today for approval. It's been a long time. First of all, in formation, the summer spent as a lot of time going through this in lots of meetings where whether it be directors that actually did peer challenge, cabinet members, scrutiny chairs, all actually going back through the self-assessment and how it related to the annual delivery plan. It then came to Cabinet as a draft on the 7th of September before it went off around scrutiny committees and also to Governance and Audit Committee before it came back to Cabinet on the 19th of October, the final draft self-assessment report, and then it went back to Governance and Audit Committee before it came back to Cabinet, before it was referred back to Cabinet on the 2nd of November, and from there it came here. There have been lots of discussion in relation to this, and if I can give you just a flavour of some of those and what's been changed as a result of those discussions. First of all, there's actually been discussion in Governance and Audit and also some scrutinies in terms of the accessibility of the report. And I think it's something that we need to look again at this year, and in terms we go forward, is how we report the self-assessment findings. In some ways, some people said, well, actually this is quite difficult to understand. Other people said, well, actually, in relation to the fact it's sort of such a comprehensive report, that it is accessible. But I think that what we've looked at going forward is and in terms of the report includes sort of the following area where it says that our aim is to produce and widely circulate a public summary document as part of engagement work informed by feedback from residents and members on how they would like the council's performance information reported. That will include an easy read version of the annual self-assessment report and bite-sized social media posts. A series of bite-sized social media posts have been created linked to the 2022-23 draft annual self-assessment finding and being released over a number of weeks. But it is difficult to get that. And there's also how do we clarify that the report refers to our performance against the ADP, not against the performance as might be wished through the year. There was discussion about Brexit and whether or not there should be mention of that within critical challenges, and on reflection, that was removed from the annual self-assessment report. There was discussion about hybrid meetings. I suppose that we'd hoped we'd be further on by now, so that it has been amended so that we've retained the following, which is embed our use of the integrated hybrid meeting technology to improve participation in local democracy in line with our public participation priorities, as this remains the key area of focus going forward. And I know that members who have taken part in the training of the new hybrid solution or who have participated in the drop-in sessions have found it very, very accessible. So hopefully we'll be going forward with that in the near future. In terms of public engagement and communication, there was discussion around the commentary to outline to the public how the council spends its money and the priority areas that the money is allocated to as part of communicating the assessment, and in particular the council's budget. And it was mentioned that it should also be clearly highlighted that the majority of the council's budget, around 75% in fact, is allocated to education and social services, which meant that other service areas were under extreme budget pressure. And I think that's something that we're going to need to take forward as we discuss the forthcoming budget discussions. So if you look at our year in focus, which is towards the end of the report, I think somewhere around about page 66 of the report, yes, it was, it actually says that we spent 272.558 million on delivering public services for the period 1st of April 2022 to 31st of March 2023. And that's actually up just under 18.5 million from last year. With a population of 132,534. This equates to £2,057 per person, and that's up from 1,878 in 2021-22. Learning and skills and social care services accounted for 74, or just slightly over 74%, which was 72.98%, so 73% in 2021 of the council's budget expenditure in 2022-23 in delivering our key priorities as outlined in the corporate plan. So we have to keep referring back to the fact that the annual self-assessment refers to corporate plan, and from there to the annual plan and to our service plans. Additionally, work to promote to citizens of the Vale of Glamorgan the budgets available and the discretion over spending decisions to help increase awareness. And I think we'll be doing a lot more of that in relation to the budget setting process throughout the year. And that's reflected in the annual self-assessment as an area of focus for the coming year. In relation to public engagement on our critical challenges and priorities, a further area of focus has been included in the annual self-assessment report, and that states that to analyse and report the Let's Talk About Life in the Vale survey to ensure the voice of residents is used to inform council decisions, and to progress plans for focus groups to ensure all residents are represented, including those seldom heard. And I think that's got to be a really key area for two-way dialogue, so that we can actually get to the stage of, you said this is what we did, or you said this is why we did part of it and why we can't necessarily do all of it because of other restrictions on us. There was also a query about agency staff and to review the sort of, how and why we use agency staff within the council. And there's also information on that in the sort of our year in profile. So that's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of the annual self-assessment and how it's changed. I think most members will have participated in at least one meeting where it has been discussed, if not taking part in the actual initial self-assessment discussions that went on. through the summer. So in essence, this report has been referred to us in full council today for consideration approval, and I would so move.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second that, Mayor, and reserve the right to speak at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor George Carroll, please. Oh, sorry. I'm just getting used to this new system. Councillor Mark Hooper, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This is a big report that says too little about the past and assists little in our future activities of this council. As a leader explicitly stated in her introduction, it's taken a huge amount of senior management resource and likewise the time of elected members. Whilst we recognise we are statutorily obliged to undertake this work, the way we have chosen to undertake this exercise is, in my opinion, a missed opportunity, perhaps a deliberately missed opportunity. I'm pleased to see some challenges that came through the scrutiny process being reflected in the changed narrative, particularly pleased with regard to Project Zero, which the council recognises is going to be extremely difficult work. I'm also pleased to hear the leader reference the need for improving accessibility of this report in the future, which I think is crucial, and removing Brexit as a key challenge. Whilst the impact of Brexit will be a challenge to the council, it's no longer a key challenge as has been reflected in governance and audit reports. What we have ended up with, though, in the round could be seen as an overly positive puff piece, marketing PR puff. To be useful to everyone, cabinet members, councillors, officers, and importantly the public at large, I would want a report that accurately reflected the council's actions in terms of the lived reality of Vale residents. This self-assessment doesn't do this, and for this reason, we, as the Plaid Group, won't be voting to approve it this evening. Vale residents deserve better than self-congratulatory backslapping. They deserve honesty. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Carroll, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The annual self-assessment report enables this council to comply with its statutory duties to review and report on its performance throughout the financial year. The draft report has, as the leader stated, already been examined by the council's scrutiny committees, at which many comments and suggestions were made. The main headline I take out of this report, of the council's self-assessment report, is that with regard to most key indicators, including on its use of resources, the administration has rated its performance as good. On the basis of the authority's performance during 2022-23, the year in question, I believe that residents will be astonished at that assessment, quite frankly. I understand the leader's comments about the report referencing and marking itself against the annual delivery plan and corporate plan, but I think that these and wider performance are intertwined. They only exist to enable the council to perform its functions and to do so effectively. If we take a look at this council's record in the year in question, council tax went up yet again. Through better management of the budget, a council tax freeze was possible. But rather than face up to this challenge, this Labour administration took the easy option to charge residents more. This may have been the easy option for the cabinet, but it put unnecessary pressure on the budgets of hard-working families across the Vale. And did the Labour administration use the 2022-2023 period as an opportunity to improve the way the authority is run? No, it did not. When we come back to that key indicator within the report, use of resources, things got worse, which saw another council tax rise imposed for the current financial year. And problems with waste collections and the garden waste service were not addressed, which has instead culminated in cuts being made to the former and charges being introduced for the latter. Now, Madam Mayor, I operate on the assumption that this self-assessment was completed in good faith. But if that is the case, and the self-appraisal was carried out honestly, then it is also frankly delusional. Because if we look at the performance over the past 12 months, I can't understand logically how, when measured against those key indicators, so many of them could possibly have been considered good. And I say with confidence that the majority of residents would agree. This council exists to serve residents, and it's quite clear that the service it provides must improve, and it must improve substantially. These improvements will not be achieved if the council fails to face up to reality and accepts when its performance has been substandard. In reviewing so many aspects of its performance as good, it's merely burying its head in the sand, and I therefore cannot endorse this report.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Franks, please.
Thank you. I must say, council taxpayers will be astonished that it's considered that we have met our targets and suggest that the council is good. I think the main response from residents is that this council is on the verge of failing. Consider a few points. We have over 20 schools with a deficit budget, and around 18 of them see no prospect of recovery within 3 years. The state of our highways and pavements is a disgrace. Many play areas are being run into the ground. Community centres are starved of investment. We have a decline in bus service, although £3 million has been spent on to date, an unused bus interchange. And there's been this unnecessary increase in the level of council tax. I'm surprised that you dare to mention Facebook and social media. To say it is a mixed picture is a clever phrase, but from my experience, there's a torrent of criticism from residents covering a wide range of issues. When I have suggested to officers that some positive news is posted, they recoil in horror, knowing that the standing of the authority is so low, they will face a very negative reaction. We hear so much about active travel and how important it is to encourage people to get out of their cars. Yet try and get a public right-of-way maintained. It takes ages. Try and get public footpaths maintained. It's like getting blood out of a stone. It's this very disappointing Labour and Independent Cabinet talks the talk, but does not walk the walk. This is just a sample of the failings of this council. It is simply not possible to support the annual assessment be awarded a good mark. So, as has been explained, we will not be supporting this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Councillor Wilson, please. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's Councillor Marnie next. Sorry. Councillor Marnie, please.
Okay, I'm with you now, just trying to click on all the relevant buttons. 2 secs. Well, this would be laughable, wouldn't it, if it wasn't so tragic, really. I think you have to take any self-assessment that judges you as good, with a touch of salt, isn't it? I mean, one of the reasons I don't go on scrutiny committees and refuse to is because 10 years of watching the aforementioned backslapping amongst council officers joining in with various chairmen and chairwomen, they're a total farce, and which is why, as I repeat, I refuse to go on them. But just to include the parody of this, they've boasted here in this report of their engagement with residents. Was it your view on the Vale or something of that nature it was called? And you have a look at this. Every single indicator here says that basically 27% of respondents stated they strongly agreed that services were of high quality, 49% against. 55% think the Vale of Glamorgan Council acts in the doesn't act in the interest of local residents. 64% don't agree that residents' views are taken into account when making a decision. That's backed up by just about every sham and fake consultation process that I've ever seen the Vale carry out. Just at this moment now, in my own ward, we have a whole section of my ward in Cosmiston who weren't even told there was a consultation and proposals to create a new ward for their houses. You didn't even bother telling them that the consultation was going on. How is that a consultation? I had to tell them and leaflet every house, or they wouldn't, to this day, they wouldn't know that there was a consultation going on about their houses and whether they're going to be transferred to Penarth and creating a new ward. It's only, I don't know, what can I say, the deluded who think they can give themselves a good rating when you see these figures here, 55%, 64%, 61% don't think you're doing a good job, don't think you represent their interests, and don't think you listen to them. I mean, a self-assessment is just a complete and utter joke. I'll be voting against. I do realise it's a difficult job running a local authority. I do realise financial constraints, but you clearly haven't taken the public with you, and there's a reason for that, and you can count me in the 64%. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Before I go to Councillor Wilson, can I just ask Councillor Franks, is that a legacy hand, please? Thank you. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those comments. They're very interesting in the sense they don't tell me anything in terms of where the facts are. I can't see any facts come out about, apart from a few quotes of percentages. The first point I'd like to point out to everybody here is that in my area in particular, we have opened up the resource recycling facility, okay, in Atlantic Trading Estate. And if anyone has been there, and I'm more than happy for any member to join me or join officers to visit the site, those who have been hugely impressed. And it makes you realise how much work and effort the officers have made upon that. To me, it is one of the best facilities, probably, if not just in Wales, but in the UK. And the officers need to be congratulated to that. The second point I would like to make is in reference to Councillor Carroll. How dare he have the audacity, as leader of the Conservative group, to talk about the problems we have with resources and the council tax increase. The council tax increase was substantially lower than the rate of inflation. And who caused that high rate of inflation? Well, it was Liz Truss's administration, wasn't it? And we're still having the cost of that 9.8%, almost 10%. And in many cases, our percentages are even much higher than that. And, and I find it very, very big of Councillor Carroll to criticise us, given the financial constraints that we suffer because of cost of living crisis. What you've got to remember, Councillor Carroll, along with everyone else, is that increase, we didn't want to increase the council tax at all. But if we didn't, we have reserves which will get less and less and less to almost zero. And we be on a crisis like other councils, like an ex-Conservative council, namely Woking, which is almost a £1 billion of deficit. And I've been to Woking, I've seen what has happened in that authority. The things they have built and developed is absolutely incredible. So I find it quite amazing that Councillor Carroll likes to criticise us, but doesn't offer anything constructive in that we can simply deal with properly and effectively. And yes, we do live in difficult, challenging times, but I think the fault lays with the Conservative government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I like the way that Councillor Wilson started by saying that Councillor Carroll has nothing positive to say and then talked about everything except the report that's in front of us. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. It's very informative. There's a lot of stuff in this, but unfortunately, as has been pointed out by several participants already, and a report in which you're marking your own homework is not one that's taken seriously by the public. As the leader said at the start, one of the challenges is, how to make this accessible and useful for the general public. And some of the ideas brought forward there were very helpful. However, I think they were also brought forward last year and don't seem to have acted upon. The challenge that we have, I believe, is that there is a groupthink difference between how the council perceives itself and how the general public perceives the council in terms of its wider performance. I think of the challenge that I find in looking at this is that there are obviously, and as Councillor Wilson said, I'll happily touch on this, large numbers of great things that the council do because people work hard on a daily basis, and we are an organisation with a £500 million turnover and a lot of people working and therefore delivering on lots of things. And cherry picking those, can be dangerous in any way you want to pick it. However, it seems very strange to me that we look at our annual delivery plan and we can turn around and say that everything is good. It feels a bit like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's mostly harmless. What use is that? It's like a football referee being assessed and being told that you did very well because you got all the routine things done, but you missed the major decisions. You missed the handball. You missed the poor tackle. So when I look back, and I look back at these things through through the prism of the exemptions reporting system that we have in scrutiny, through looking at the things that are going wrong, because that's what we need to be able to do, is to look at the things that are going wrong and correct them. And that's why we are here to improve this format. We have to produce a report. But what I look at when I look back at 22-23 is I look back at a year in which this council was unable to have hybrid meetings in which I could speak Welsh and be interpreted. I look back on a year in which we had the overspend on the Oracle system, where Corporate Performance and Resources asked for a report on that in October last year and have still not received one 13 months later. I look back on a year in which we struggled for large parts of summer 22 to have our green waste collected because we couldn't recruit delivery drivers. I look back on a year where Wales Online, through their Freedom of Information request, tell us that we had the longest wait in terms of care packages. I look back on a year in which we had Pencoitra and Penargarth go into special measures. I look back on a year in which we decided to build a bus station for £3 million and then turned around afterwards and said that COVID had impacted on bus passengers, as if that wasn't true during last year. There's a whole raft of things that we know this council didn't do very well last year. There are lots of challenges and there's lots of good work the council has done, but this sort of report needs to be able to reflect both of those. And when I read this report, I see a lot of backslapping, an awful lot of greens, an awful lot of good. And I don't think that's a fair reflection on how the council actually performs when it's put under pressure. And it's under a lot of pressure, as we're constantly told. And I don't think it's how our public see it. And given that, both Section 91 and Section 90 of the Local Elections Wales Act in 2021, want us to reflect and triangulate those, we need to have a better position on this rather than simply telling everybody the council is good and it's the people's fault for thinking that we're bad. As other members of my group have said, I would like to vote against this tonight, and I'd like to call for a recorded vote, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Perry, please.
Hi, yeah, the social media. One of my residents has posted on social media today actions by the Vale Glamorgan Council, which I warned the Vale Glamorgan Council about on numerous occasions. Yes, the trees in St Nicholas went today, and the outrage and fury of residents who have no explanation and have had absolutely no say in the matter. Although we're told there's been lots of conversations, the residents are yet again furious. Funnily enough, I found someone else in a different part of the Vale with similar outrage of actions by the Vale Glamorgan Council. There's a lack of accountability. The report shows there's a lack of honesty as well, because we can see things with our own eyes. And yeah, the word is a lack of honesty in that report. And as Ian said, there are lots of good things this council is doing. Lots of good hard work is put in. But you undermine the hard work and the good the council does by not reflecting on what is not going so well and where we could improve. Genuine consultation, or rather partnership, is what's needed. The fact that you can't even get people to come to a community council on some occasions because perhaps they're afraid that the actual community disagrees with what officers think. The officers want to impose things on us, and there is no accountability. Building on village greens, refusing to protect village greens, public open spaces. The list goes on, and we start focusing on those rather than the good things. For the good officers who are doing good work, those things get lost. It's a complete failure to recognise areas for improvement, and it is just so disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Before I go to the Deputy Leader, Councillor Brooks, could I just ask Councillor Wood to turn his camera off, please? Thank you. Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, some of these comments that I've heard here tonight are pretty unbelievable. To be accused of dishonesty, downright lying, it's quite astounding, absolutely astounding. Yes, the annual assessment or the report is not perfect, far from it, and we've never said that it is. But we've actually facing extremely difficult times, and we have to look at the road to Westminster, and we have to look at the settlement budgets, and that has impacted hugely on all local authorities, not just ours. And in fact, I think if you look over the border where they haven't had the protection of Welsh Government, it's a much more desperate situation again, and that is borne out by the state of their affairs and the threats that they're actually under of collapsing. We've actually had to operate in a way that actually trying to protect our most vulnerable of residents, and that's not an easy task with the issues that they're facing day in, day out, and the pressures they're facing. So we've had to make difficult decisions, and lots of that has then centres around those non-statutory services. And our priorities, I believe, are right. And as I said, that is reflected in the assessment report. And just to add on a note of caution around the misinformation that is being spread, particularly around things like the interchange. It's not council money, despite that misinformation that is being out there, whether that's being misrepresented or misquoted, I'm not sure. But we know that it is not council money. It has been years in planning to bring that, and it is there for future use, and the start of that, as we all are aware, is actually in January. So that is all I wish to add, and I do support this report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Gwyn John, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too am astounded by some of the comments here tonight, and quite honestly, I'd like to know what scrutiny committees are doing when they fail to bring these comments up. Or do they rather come to a full council meeting to play politics? Councillor Carroll, well, I think he needs to go back to school regarding budgets, because quite honestly, I don't know where he's coming from. But if he thinks it's been tough, it's going to get tougher. Make no mistake about it. It is getting tougher. You only have to look at the state across Wales at the moment with all the other councils. And this council is no different. It's getting tougher. So I hope you go to the meeting, Councillor Carroll, on the 30th of November. I hope you're there and you learn something from it. Because quite simply, the coming year, the coming budget is going to be really, really tough for everyone. Make no mistake about it. Yes, there are many things that could be done better, but at the same time, this council at the moment is finding it very, very difficult with some of the things that have come out of Westminster. The year that we've had of inflation just alone really hammers every council, and particularly this council, and all the work that we do. Everything has costed extra, and some projects haven't gone ahead yet, simply because we haven't got the money to put it together. So I'll say no more now, only to say to you, wake up, open your eyes and see where we are for the future.
Thank you, Councillor John. Councillor Hodges, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was loath to speak, but I think I have to, because some of the comments I'm hearing from the ruling group. Firstly, the interchange wasn't council money. No, it was public money, and it was a scheme that this council wanted and actually insisted upon happening without doing the due diligence of finding out if it actually have any buses. So there you go. It's interesting to hear how Labour councillors blaming Westminster for all our problems. Well, welcome to my world for the last all my life. basically Labour have signed up to the same economic agreements for future budgets. They've said that little will change. Question about what's scrutiny doing from Councillor John. Good question. Sometimes meetings don't even happen. Sometimes we just have presentations, and usually we just have reports to note. That isn't discussion, that isn't scrutiny. And the very fact that we're still operating hybridly like this, because we can't get our own IT systems to work, shows, and it debases debate. And it's only through proper debate, bringing in all the councillors with all their knowledge and all their expertise, that we might actually get a truthful report rather than a good report. As has been said, if this was a pub quiz, you'd pass your papers to someone else to mark. You wouldn't mark them yourself. This is not real. This is not reality. I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Liz Burnett, please, leader.
Thank you, Mayor. I take it that there's no one else who wants to speak, so if I could just summarise some of the points. I have found the discourse this evening very disappointing. I did mention earlier that the self-assessment report started in terms of peer challenge, in terms of meetings, including scrutiny chairs, etc. in the summer, and then it went round various scrutiny committees. What I didn't say, but which all members would know, is where the work that we are assessing came from, because everybody was involved in drawing up the annual delivery plan. Actually, most people, probably about half of members, were involved in developing the corporate plan before that. All members would have been involved in signing off the service plans, but so often there's no comment from scrutiny except to note. And I will take issue with Councillor Hodges about saying just having reports to note. We don't send reports to note. We send reports for consideration. And it would actually be nice to have some constructive dialogue as a result of those reports. Talking about Vale residents deserve honesty. Well, I echo what Councillor Brooks said. So many things that this council does are years in the planning. They're subject to strategies. They're subject to then you have a strategy, you know what you want to do, you have to go and find the money. The transport interchange, which is not purely buses, there is car parking, there are cycle provision, there's improved pedestrian provision. If we hadn't planned that, we'd have never got Subway Road upgraded because we didn't own it. So there are so many facets to that. And I was actually looking back at press releases that were put out that explained where the funding came from previous cabinet reports, which explained the background to those strategies. And oh heavens, members would have seen those as well. We've heard Councillor Carroll saying that we've taken easy options. Well, I have to correct you. Since the start of austerity, there have been no easy options. Everything has been a balance of priorities and very uncomfortable balance in terms of what we have to try and do. Within that, there has been innovation, there has been creativity, there have been some very, very forward-thinking ideas and strategies. But more than anything, there has been hard graft on behalf of talented officers across this council. We've heard talking about political grandstanding. Well, I would love to have more contribution in the forthcoming budget discussions, because it's going to take the collective input of 54 people to get through this round, unless we don't see tax cuts for businessmen coming through tomorrow. If we actually see an investment in public services in the autumn statement, that would be wonderful. But the mood music is not saying that. And the mood music is saying that we have got a very difficult 6 months ahead before we eventually settle a budget. We've heard from Councillor Marnie about lack of consultation in terms of the recent boundary changes. Well, maybe Councillor Marnie should have taken part in the cross-party group that he was invited to, where he could have had full input into that, but he chose not to attend. So in essence, there was a measurement of plans that members in this meeting agreed. There were numerous scrutiny committees and discussions there when nothing was brought up. And then we, as usual, get to a full council meeting where people just grandstand, making inaccurate comments and look forward to their next press release. Not a really good look, is it? So on that note, I will further confirm the recommendation that full council approve the final draft Vale of Glamorgan's annual self-assessment report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Perry, is this a point of order or because you're not really allowed to speak a second time?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just want to say I completely agree with the leader of a lack of scrutiny in scrutiny committees. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else wishes to speak. Do I have? Did Councillor Johnson? Did you ask for a recorded vote? Yep. Thank you.
I did, Mayor. Yes.
Yeah, Mayor.
You.
For clarity, we need 6 people to
yes.
Indicate that they want a recorded vote. Show of hands would be suitable for that, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Over that limit, that's fine.
Thank you, members. We will move to the recorded vote, please, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll try not to miss anybody out this time, so please bear with me. So if you can indicate if you are for the recommendations or against the recommendations, or you wish to abstain in turn. So I will start with Councillor Anne Asprey, please.
Against.
Councillor Julie Aviett.
For.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
For.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
For.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
For.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Against.
Councillor Ian Buckley.
For.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
For.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
For.
Councillor George Carroll.
Against.
Councillor Charles Champion.
Against.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Against.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Against.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
Against.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
For.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Ernest.
Against.
Councillor Chris Franks.
Against.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
For.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
For.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
For.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
Against.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
For.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
For.
Councillor William Hennessy.
Against.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
Against.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
And Erbyn against.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
For.
Councillor Gwyn John.
For.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
And Erbyn against.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
For.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
For.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
For.
Councillor Kevin Marnie.
Against.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
For.
Councillor Jane Norman.
For.
Councillor Helen Payne.
For.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
For.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
For.
Councillor Ian Perry.
Against.
Councillor Joanna Prythro.
For.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianam.
For.
Councillor Caris Stallard.
O blaid. For.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
For.
Councillor Rhys Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
For.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
For.
Councillor Nicholas Wood.
Against.
Thank you. That concludes the vote, and I make that 30 for the recommendation, 19 against, and no abstentions. I don't know if that's worth checking, if anybody was counting along with me. 30 for
Yes, that's
19
confirmed.
I agree.
against.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So the report is carried and agreed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Thank you, members. We will now go to the second special council meeting. So we have to go through the special council meeting of the 20th of November 2023. And I shall have to go through the housekeeping again. Under the Council's multi-locations policy, this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's website as soon as possible after the meeting. Can I also ask all members, except for Cabinet members and group leaders, that your mics and cameras are turned off until you are invited by myself to speak. Should you wish to speak, would you please indicate by raising the hand function on Teams. If this function ceases to work during the meeting, please indicate in the chat facility your wish to speak. With regard to voting on recommendations, if there is no dissent to a recommendation, I will accept the silence as agreement. Should a vote, however, be required, it is my intention that all members be asked individually for their vote. If during the meeting you have technical difficulties, please let the Democratic Services Officer know, please. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, please. Councillor Johnson.
Councillor Stephen William.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Councillors Russell Godfrey, Robert Fisher and Christine Cave.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Burnett, Leader.
Councillor Marshalsea, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Leader. And next, for the roll call of members and to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interest. Chief Executive, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate you'll probably be asking why I need to go through this again, but there may well be declarations of interest associated with this next meeting and this next report. So I'll go through the names in turn, starting with Councillor Anne Asprey, please.
Presennol, ydym byd datgan.
Councillor Julie Aviett.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Buckley.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor George Carroll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Charles Champion.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Anthony Ernest.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Chris Franks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor William Hennessy.
Present with nothing to declare.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
Presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
Presennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Jane Norman.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Present all and nothing to declare.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Present, and at Environment and Regeneration I declared an interest on this, but on advice it wasn't deemed personal or prejudicial.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra Perks.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Perry.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Joanna Prothero.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ruba Sivanianam.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Carrie Stallard.
Yn bresennol a dim byd i'w ddatgan.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhys Thomas.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Present and nothing to declare.
And Councillor Nicholas Wood, please.
Present and nothing to declare.
Thank you very much, Mayor. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is the reference from Cabinet from the 2nd of November 2023 and Scrutiny Committee 14th of November 2023. It's the Vale of Glamorgan Replacement Local Development Plan 2021 to 2036. I'll hand you over to the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services, Councillor Ruba Sivanianam, please.
Thank you, Chair. This evening I'm asking for Council's formal approval of two documents. The first is the Replacement Local Development Plan Revised Delivery Agreement and its submission to Welsh Government. And the second is the approval of the Replacement Local Delivery Plan Preferred Strategy for public consultation. This report I'm about to give considers two documents relating to the Replacement Local Delivery Plan. The first is the Revised Delivery Agreement, which sets out who will be involved in the plan preparation and the timetable for doing so. The approval of this document for submission to Welsh Government will ensure that we have a realistic timetable in place for the next stages of plan preparation. The second document is the Preferred Strategy, which sets out the vision, objectives and strategy for the Replacement Local Development Plan for the 15-year period from 2021 to 2036. So, Chair, if I may, I'll begin with an overview. It is a requirement for every local authority to have an up-to-date development plan. But while the legislation may set the timetable, this plan is driven by our belief that by effectively managing development over the next 15 years, we can create a Vale of Glamorgan that delivers improved economic, health and educational outcomes for all our citizens. We need a local development plan to give our expert planning and sustainable development team a framework that ensures land use decisions are determined by a consistent set of values, as well as planning legislation. And I would like to record my thanks to the team for their meticulous hard work in getting us this far. Our plan is unashamedly one for growth. We have an ageing population, and it is important that we seek to achieve a demographic balance by encouraging people of working age and their families to live and work in the Vale. This will drive economic prosperity and ensure, and will ensure, and will ensure a range of communities and businesses that will make the Vale the special and sustainable place that it is. Planning for no growth or low growth simply is not an option. All members should be very well aware that we are living in a housing crisis, and as a result, it is housing that forms the spine of this plan. And I'd like to take a moment to highlight a few of our determining factors. Here in the Vale, we have an incredible need for affordable housing. Our local housing market assessment tells us we need 1,200 new affordable homes each year. The new sites identified in the replacement local development plan will offer the opportunity of new affordable housing to be secured through Section 106 agreements and for small-scale affordable housing-led developments in our minor rural settlements. This means that the Vale will be able to offer affordable homes to help local families stay in the towns and villages they want to call home. Through this, we can strengthen our communities and ensure they remain sustainable for future generations. The plan includes 5 new key sites that would allow settlements of Barry, Dinas Powys, Roos and St Athan to expand in a sustainable way. The strategy makes provision for a level of growth that is based on past build rates over a 10-year period. It is ambitious, but realistic. The new sites identified will provide 2,600 of the 7,890 new homes which are proposed. I apologise. These development plans are founded on 2 key additional elements: consultation and sustainability. It's important to note that these sites have been identified following a site assessment process which took place in consultation with key stakeholders. During that consultation, we were able to work with communities to identify sites which could contribute to the key elements of the strategy. The sustainability element is enshrined in our placemaking approach to planning policy. This is designed to deliver communities, not just homes. Our sustainable growth strategy will provide both housing and employment growth, but growth supported by appropriate infrastructure so that we are able to have sustainable and sustained communities. It's a strategy which accords with the Vale's position within the Cardiff capital region. More importantly, it's one which will enable the people of the Vale to create a vibrant future here in the Vale. While housing is crucial to our vision for growth, growth is far more than new homes. It's one for new infrastructure, amenities and jobs. Improved options for active travel are vital to help in the fight against climate change. The preferred strategy focuses development in locations that are well served by existing and proposed new rail stations and in areas with good bus links. This is identified as our strategic growth area. In addition, the plan also allows for small-scale affordable housing-led development in settlements outside the strategic growth area at a scale proportionate to the size of the settlement. The plan sets a framework that will allow us to align locations for new housing, employment, services and facilities to reduce the need for lengthy journeys by car. The Council's corporate plan makes clear that it is more opportunities for education and employment that help people out of poverty. The deposit LDP provides for 5,338 jobs to meet the needs of the population. 67.8 hectares of employment land is allocated for this. It also enables us to support the role of Cardiff Airport as a strategic gateway for international connectivity and allows for large-scale regeneration opportunities, including at Aberthaw and Barry Docks. The RLDP also considers the Vale in the wider regional and national context, and this is important because it is aligned with Future Wales, the national plan for 2040. The Vale is within a Future Wales national growth area alongside Cardiff, Newport and the Valleys. This national growth area is the focus for economic and housing growth, and therefore there is an expectation that these areas will accommodate an appropriate level of growth to reflect this. And this growth should be at a level that is complementary to and does not compete with Cardiff. It is worth underlining that this is a plan to which we have all contributed, or at least have had the opportunity to do so. For example, elected members have so far had the opportunity to be involved at every stage of the developing of the preferred strategy, from determining the vision and objectives to influencing growth and spatial options. Ahead of tonight's meeting, all members had an opportunity to attend a briefing on the preferred strategy. The views expressed at these engagement sessions have been vital in shaping the preferred strategy, in particular, the focusing of development in areas
Cabinet member.
Well served by public transport was something strongly favoured by members, as was the need for small-scale affordable housing. And it's not only elected members who have contributed to a wide range of other stakeholders have also been involved, including the PSB. In moving this report for approval, I'd like to emphasise that the preferred strategy is only the first stage in the process of adopting a replacement local development plan, and what is proposed in the delivery agreement is an extensive public consultation. Chair, I so move.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder, please?
And I'll second, Mayor.
Thank you, Leader.
And could I reserve the right to speak if needed? Thank you.
Yes, Leader. Do we have anybody wishing to speak? Councillor Haynes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be concentrating on the RLDP. So this document, the RLDP, is based on a premise that we need X amount of houses for X amount of people for X amount of jobs, and not what it should be based on, which is X amount of land for employment, X new facilities, X new houses, and X number of social houses. Why isn't this done? Well, I finally got the answer from the officers. We don't have the resources to do that, is what I was told. And the reason we have massive building in some locations and none in others, the reply was, that is where the developers want to build. Not rather where they're needed or where we want them to build. So this is just not a plan, it's just a developer's charter. But I'm going to concentrate on St Athan as a ward member. There's a massive development at St Athan, the second massive development in St Athan, and this one is 1,150 houses plus the rolled forward developments under the last LD. It's frankly unbelievable, this level of development, and that's approximately 1/5 of the housing that this council wants to build. So we'll move to 6.46 within this document. It states St Athan Rules are key locations for employment growth within the area. The two settlements are identified as primary settlements. Primary settlements weren't involved in the placemaking scheme, so they weren't engaged. Further growth within these settlements would accord their roles within a wider growth area due to the proximity to Brotathan and Cardiff Enterprise Zones and the proposed Aberthaw Green Energy Park, as well as existing and future transport connectivity proposals. A couple of points there. Brotathan and Cardiff Enterprise Park are one and the same thing. They are both the Cardiff Enterprise Zones. Aberthaw, as to my knowledge yet, has not been taken over by the Cardiff Capital Region and will take years to demolish. Now, the Employment Land Survey, which I finally managed to get my hands on, which should have been attached to this document from day one, states that between 2015 and 2020, the total number of jobs within the Vale of Glamorgan has stayed constant at approximately 41,000. So there's a zero growth here. 1,500 to 2,500 workers employed at the enterprise zone by 2026 would be a successful outcome for the project. To reach this employment figure would require an acceleration of the relocation of businesses to St Athan and Cardiff airport areas. There is likely to be substantial lead times on growth of this site, even with the existing infrastructure. Substantial lead times. Now, Brotathan has 1,200 jobs at the moment. 700 are Aston Martin, so there hasn't been a great success in recruiting aviation jobs, as was its key point. And the stakeholders highlighted that key weakness of the Brotathan is a lack of services. Services this council is saying in the document there are in St Athan. So we can safely say that there will be substantial lead time in the possible jobs, but it is important that we also take on another point from the LS. And this was in bold. It is important to emphasise that this is a measure of jobs capacity this land could support rather than a forecast of new jobs, which could be generated in the Vale. So it's potential jobs. They're not actual jobs. They don't exist yet. Just on a data point, Council's Table 1 in this document, I can't tally it with the Employment Land Survey document data. Names are the same, figures are different. Now, approximately, this is the train station. 1 year ago, I asked in full council when the second feasibility study into a train station was going to start. The reply from the deputy leader was that we have no plans for a train station. Now, we move on to November 22. I first see the draft of this document, where there is a train station. A train station that the council said they had no plans. I, of course, pointed out there isn't one. Now, in Jan 23, the council finally put in a feasibility study request to Westminster. You have yet to have a response on that, so there is no money for a feasibility study. It takes about 7 years to build a train station, and often longer.
Councillor Haynes.
This document, I understand, is revised every 5 years. So a feasibility study isn't even going ahead. So I reiterate, 0 jobs over the last 5 years. Any new jobs that are going to happen in the long-term future. A train station is not going to be built before this document is reviewed in 5 years. And this alone means that this document contravenes Policy 12, regional activity regarding the development in St Athan. Now, I urge councillors not to vote, as they usually do, with the officer's recommendations, and think what you want. You want a good LDP that represents the needs of the residents of the Vale of Glamorgan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Near enough on time. Thank you. Who have we got? Councillor Marnie, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I was a certain bit of disbelief then. I was hearing the words of Ruba there. Sustainability, that word, I'm sure you're bored of me bringing it to your attention yet again, the buzzword of the local authority. This is an authority that's just built or is about to be building the best part of 70 houses down the Bendricks. This is a community which is served by a road that goes through a C2 floodplain, which is regularly shut off by the local authority and the emergency services to the flooding that is in a C2 flood zone. The other side and the other road out of it is, of course, a private road owned by ABP, which is also subject to flooding to the extent that they have a sign at the entrance to their docks of beware flooding or something of that nature. This is a community who's left down there, whose only bus service has just been removed following the Welsh Labour government's removal of bus subsidies. So basically, that's 70 households who have been dumped down in an area, surrounded by a flood zone. There's not a shop within miles. The only facility of any description is a transport cafe at the end of the road. So I'm sure many people, if not the Cabinet, if not the Labour Party in the Vale of Glamorgan, will appreciate why I and many others have no faith whatsoever in anything put forward by the Vale of Glamorgan in this respect, to be honest with you. You can add to that, in Sully, of course, prime farming land, yet again being built over at rate of knots, and also down at Cosmaston, proposals and allocation for housing, of course, on another site where the adjacent road is in a C2 flood zone, where officers have already said they're scared stiff, and I've been down there doing a walkthrough with them, that they don't really want any more water going in the Sully Brook, and they won't dredge it any further because Sully Moors won't cope with the water and the danger to the chemical works and other businesses down there. So I'm sure many people watching this, maybe not Labour Party members, will excuse my scepticism at anything proposed by this administration and, quite frankly, the planning department. So stop using the word sustainability, please, all the time, when you just ignore it and go against it. And of course, I do mention yet again the virtue signalling of the climate change aficionados when you're busy building over prime farming land all over the place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Hooper, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. The Plaid Group recognise the importance of the RDLP and want to endorse a strategy that delivers against the needs of the Vale. This will please Councillor Marnie sustainably. We also recognise that this is a process and the proposed process is appropriate. It does, however, require councillors to be able to take a view on elements that are yet to be determined or work through as to whether issues can be resolved. The process does take us to further detail as it is developed. Detail that hopefully challenges and supports a plan that we can all get behind and support. We therefore support the revised delivery agreement. As a general rule, we're supportive of seeking opportunities that coincide with existing transport and other infrastructure assets. But at the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee meeting last Tuesday, members heard testimony from local members and others challenging 3 of the major sites in the strategy on infrastructure grounds. As I said, we have to reconcile those concerns with our views as to whether these issues can be appropriately addressed at some point in the upcoming process. We need a strategy that delivers the homes and other developments needed for our communities to thrive, not ones that enable developers to simply make a quick buck. As a resident of a recent development at the waterfront, which we all know about, we know all too well what it's like to be left at the margins by developers whose eyes are on the next big financial prize. So, reflecting on the contributions in particular of Alexandra Jenkins in relation to the land to the east of Barry by the Little Roundabout, Councillor Samantha Campbell's in-depth and I think well-researched contribution regarding the infrastructure deficit at the Readers Way site, and Dinis Powys councillor colleagues' similar concerns over the sites in their village, particularly the land on the road to Llandoch. We do not think that this strategy is sufficiently well-rounded to be put before the public for consultation. We would therefore request the preferred strategy is taken back, reworked, and re-presented to us in the new year, having given active consideration to the key points made by those closest to the proposed developments. I'd also like to request that the vote on this matter is recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Carroll, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As we know, inappropriate developments blight communities, and the replacement local development plan is an opportunity for us to ensure that that doesn't happen. But regrettably, I see little in this report and the draft strategy that indicates that this will be the case. I see nothing to suggest that suitable infrastructure will be put in place to enable the respective communities to cope. Now, I'm conscious that I won't have time to set out all of my concerns within the time that I'm allotted, so I will instead highlight some of the key issues. So let's take the site in Dinas Powys, which is very close to my own ward of Llandoch. The traffic issues through the village of Dinas Powys have been known to all for many, many years. Yet in its wisdom, the council seems to consider a site off Cardiff Road as one that is suitable for development. It's obvious that road infrastructure in the Eastern Vale will not be able to cope, and this won't just affect Dinas Powys itself. Indeed, it will also affect Llandoch and Penarth. I'm also frustrated to see the model farm site is still being taken forward, given the debacle that we have already seen in relation to it. Rather than waiting for the Welsh Government to determine matters, it would be far more preferable if everyone, particularly the developers, accepted that it's unsuitable and moved on. Residents from across the Vale have already approached me with concerns about the way the council is approaching the RLDP. And it's clear that the proposed approach is not fit for purpose and will have many damaging consequences. It's time to listen to residents and to think again. Now, I appreciate that the council has struggled to do that on previous occasions, but now is a good time to start. I've long considered housing targets imposed on the Vale to be arbitrary, and it's of deep regret that this seems to be continuing. It's in no one's interests to allow inappropriate, unsuitable developments to go ahead. The consequences of doing so are severe, as we sadly know from experience. So I shall be voting against. I would endorse the request for a recorded vote, and I would urge all other members to do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Franks, please.
Thank you. I'm going to focus on the sites in Dinas Powys and allegedly Barry. I think there is a huge risk of setting dangerous precedents which will just eat up all the land between Barry, Dinas Powys and Llandoch. The initial 900 houses off Argyle Lane rising, I think, to 1,500 will be a huge chunk of land and just open the way to further developments. In the scrutiny meeting where this was discussed, a local resident, Mrs. Jenkins, raised a huge number of relevant questions that need to be answered before progressing this matter. Now, I just remind people that recently the leader said it's important to use the scrutiny process to ask questions and receive substantial answers. Well, Mrs. Jenkins gave expert advice. I'm not aware that the Cabinet has responded. So it's very unsettling to be told one thing half an hour ago and now considering that those words have not been put into action. So we have a lot of issues relating to access in the Dinas Powys Llandoch area. There's access only onto one of the busiest highways in the county, the A4055, or as most people call it, Cardiff Road. But also the site that's called Barry Northeast is very isolated. It is basically a car-centric development, and there's some attempt to say, oh, Cadoxton Station is only 15 minutes away. Well, there has been no evidence produced that anyone could walk 15 minutes to Cadoxton Station. There is no sustainability strategy involved in this proposal whatsoever. People are amazed at these proposals. There's also the question of additional water runoff into the local rivers. These will almost certainly increase the risk of flooding. None of these considerations have been addressed by the Cabinet member, but I really do hope the leader does make a contribution specifically about the abject failure to respond to the expert advice of Mrs. Jenkins a couple of weeks ago. There is a lot of disgust at the way this authority is bulldozing the proposals through, and I will support rejection of the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Councillor Ernest, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm interested in the way in which there appears to be a lot of cross-party support for rejection of the plan this evening. We all have our different views on where housing should be built and not built, but there seems to be a common thread coming through. And the two sites that I was going to mention have already been mentioned, but I make no apology for repeating them. The Argyle Lane site off the Barry Docks Link Road and Landolph Cardiff Road, Penarth, because part of it does lie within Penarth, possibly within Dinas Powys as well. We have the alleged need, Madam Mayor, for new dwellings, and yet 3/4 of the demand for houses has already had planning consent, very often on brownfield sites, and yet developers are not bothered to take up these sites. I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but we were looking at over 8,000 new houses required, and yet planning consent for over 6,000 houses, as I understand it, is already in existence. So the shortfall is actually a mere 2,500 dwellings or so. I round the figures, of course. We've not heard anything tonight about infrastructure. Yes, we've heard a lot about new houses going in, but what about the new roads? What about the bypasses? What about the rail links? What about the improved bus services? Silence, silence, and silence again, because they are not part of the plan. There may be hope, there may be aspirations, but they do not exist on the plan. And that's why I think there would be a demand from developers in due course to put the houses up. But when it comes to providing facilities such as shops, doctors' surgeries, and so on and so forth, they are found to be lacking. And yet we have a situation, Madam Mayor, where Welsh Government is now selling off good agricultural land at Lower Penarth. Fine fields, which in the photograph are shown to be growing good crops or looking after the needs of cattle. And yet these greenfield sites are being sold off for more and more housing on the outskirts of Penarth. I appreciate it falls into Lavenock and Sully, but it affects Penarth because the vast bulk of the traffic coming from the new estate of some 580 houses will come through Penarth. It won't go any other way. And yet are we widening Westbourne Road, Lavenock Road, Redlands Road? Of course we're not. No, no, no. It will cope with a few extra traffic lights and roundabouts. And lastly, Madam Mayor, I would draw your members' attention to the quality or lack of it of new housing going up in the Vale. We're seeing vast estates going up of repetitive house styles, no imagination, nothing different. It's the same old house out of the box, name the Sussex or the Essex or the Colchester or something. Nothing designed for the Vale of Glamorgan to show the wonderful character that we have of our older properties. And I think that this is another factor that is not coming out in this plan. For that reason, again, I do not support the plan tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Councillor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that it's, as we are all fully aware, the draft preferred strategy is built on sustainable transport and good bus links and good train links. And I think it's extremely dangerous to put all of our control about where these houses and where everything is being built in the hands of other people. At the end of the day, we're councillors and we're the ones that are accountable to our residents. Councillor Sivignano mentioned about building these communities. At the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to be accountable for these people. There's going to be potentially, 10,000 people who are going to be coming and living in these places, in these houses, and they're not going to have any infrastructure, anywhere, any means and ways to get around our Vale if there's not any way for them to do that, if we don't put these things in place. And us as councillors, they're going to be the people that they're calling and saying that we can't get around, we can't get a doctor's appointment, we can't get a dentist appointment. They're not going to be calling Transport for Wales and saying that we can't do that. And we need to put all of these things in place before the RLDP actually goes through. So I just think that the whole draft preferred strategy, the way that we actually grow needs to be changed and thought about before it goes anywhere near public consultation, because it's just built incorrectly. Like we said, you know, we've heard that it's been put in where there's good there's good links, there's good train links, there's good bus links. There's not good bus links, there's not good train links. All these things are in the power of control of other people. Yes, we can go and have meetings with people and we can stamp our feet and say we want 2 trains an hour on the Vale line. It's been pushed back again. It's going to keep being pushed back. We have very, very little control about how these things can do. Why are we not doing things that we can control? We are an entire local authority of really hard-working, decent, elected people. Why are we not building a local development plan on something that we can control? This is insane. I just don't understand why we are putting all of our control and budgets and money and the lives of our residents in the hands of other people.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Driscoll, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Most of what I was going to say has already been said, so I won't really repeat or read out what I was going to say. But mostly, I'm going to talk mostly about the houses in Dinas Powys. Maybe they call me a NIMBY, but so be it. Since I've been a councillor, Dinas Powys has increased from 3,000, just over 3,000. With these new developments, it'll be as much as 6,000. You're doubling the size of it. There's been absolutely no infrastructure improvements. The bypass, which this council were keen on implementing, has now obviously been shelved by the Welsh Government. The big development, the one in north of Barry, I actually find it quite amusing that it's classed as north of Barry, because it doesn't seem to get much publicity then. But it's actually in Dinas Powys. You can't cover the fact that the people that live there at the moment, the houses dotted around, are all Dinas Powys residents. They vote in Dinas Powys. They use Dinas Powys schools, health centres and facilities. The next lot of residents, maybe 3,000, 4,000, we don't know, will also class themselves as Dinas Powys residents. The traffic coming from there, as Councillor Franks said earlier, it's going to be car-centric. No mistake about it. Most of them will, well, I'd say most of them, a lot of them will probably come down the new link road and through Dinas Powys, adding to that. That development and the one at Eastbrook will both feed into the rainwater will feed into the Calyxton River. It can't take any more. The moors are constantly flooded now if anyone drives past that way. And it's not going to be suitable for any more rainwater. I really think we're getting the brunt of the policy of the Vale of Glamorgan Council. Sully is getting closer. Eastbrook is getting closer. Penarth is only a field or so away. Leckwith Keys.
Sorry, Councillor Driscoll, could you put your camera on, please? And carry on then. Thank you.
I was only finished anyhow, Chair. So Leckwith Keys, they all add up to Dinas Powys. There's more houses going down Carleon Road. I'm not sure where these people are going to go to school or what health centres they're going to use, but our facilities are chock-a-block already. I'd like to know where the demand for these houses is coming. I'm quite surprised that there is a demand for them. And also that I'd like to ask about the consultation period. At scrutiny, we asked for it to be increased to 10 weeks. I've seen no recommendations that it will be. And anyway, thanks, Chair. That's all from me at the moment, but I'm very disappointed that Dinas Powys is taking the brunt of all this, but I'm sure there'll be good reasons for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. Councillor Champion, please.
My point was going to be, well, a lot of things said I agree with. We do need more housing in the Vale, but we need everything to go along with housing, schools, etc., etc. I was the one who suggested that the consultation should be increased by 2 weeks, and I know that was noted by Cabinet, but I presume has that been taken then? Perhaps Ruba can confirm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor Cowp, please. Councillor Cowp?
Thank you. I was just trying to turn my camera on. I'd just like to say that I don't think this document is ready for public consultation at the moment. A member of the public would expect the infrastructure issues that have already been mentioned, so I won't go into them, but flooding, transport, schools, medical centres, expect that to be addressed, and it is not. So I'm suggesting that this document is not ready for public consultation at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's Councillor Burnett. Are you next, or are you?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If I could just come in, it's quite interesting that an awful lot of the things that were raised today, actually, has somebody got? No, there's no interference. Could have actually been discussed and covered in one of the comprehensive briefing sessions that were held. But my understanding is, looking at the attendance, is that only 28 out of 54 members actually attended those in-depth briefing sessions, where I said an awful lot of this was covered. Infrastructure would not be discussed at this point, but it would actually be a given in terms of whether or not you planning permission was developed. But I think it's fair to say that you won't get much infrastructure from a sort of a micro site of about sort of 6 or 8 houses. So if you're looking for infrastructure, you're probably going to have to be realistic and look at more sizable sites. I think the clarification for Councillor Marnie, we couldn't look at what we were going to do with the bus that went over to Bendrix because the bus operator withdrew it. And so, you know, you can't discuss a service that is not there. I think in terms of Councillor Campbell, I have, you know, I can agree with that in terms of, you know, it would be great if we had everything laid out. But actually, most things that we do as a council are dependent upon partnerships and collaboration with others. There's a 6 monthly report through to Cabinet about all our different collaborative arrangements. It's worth having a read because quite often we are working in partnership with 2, 3, 4, maybe sometimes more, up to 10 other parties, and that is the nature of local government these days. Councillor Franks, the ENR reference was from the 14th of November. And I think that the only comment I would make in terms of people, you know, when we say, well, why do we need all these houses? People who need homes need these houses. We've all looked at the homelessness figures in the Vale, and our policy is to try and build ourselves out of that homelessness crisis. And it's interesting that I have an awful lot more people when they're talking to me about developments, asking me about the progress, not criticising it, because housing developments represent hope for many of the people in our communities. They represent hope for people who haven't got homes, hope for people who don't have suitable homes, and hope for people who live in overcrowded homes. It's important that we get this replacement LDP right. And again, I look forward to everybody's contribution when it goes out to consultation. And a report from that, a consultation report, will come back to Cabinet and it will be available for further discussion. And I look forward to a constructive conversation at that point. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Point of order, yes.
Mayor, if I can be of assistance, I think there are 3 members that have put hands up: Councillor Johnson, Councillor Driscoll and Councillor Franks. I believe all 3 have spoken before, so I just wonder if they're points of order that are being raised.
I haven't spoken this debate, Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Johnson, my mistake. Councillor Driscoll and Councillor Franks, I believe, have spoken.
Yeah, I wanted to add something, but if it's not permitted, then so be it.
Only if it's a point of order, Councillor Driscoll. Apologies.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
And can I ask Councillor Franks the same question?
Sorry, I forget you're not in the room. Yes, I'm asking a point of order.
Okay, Mayor, it's up to yourself if you take that at this point. I suggest probably best to take it now.
Thank you. It's Councillor Franks's point of order.
Yes,
that's correct.
What is?
Thank you, Mayor. My point of order is the leader was specifically asked to address the question of the evidence presented at scrutiny, and she's failed to. So when does she intend to respond? Thank you.
Councillor Lisbonette, please. Could you reply to that?
Well, I will. I don't have to. That report was taken by Councillor Sivanyanam, but I understand that the comments from the individual, I was present at the meeting but didn't speak on that point. The comments from that individual, and obviously any contribution that they make into the consultation will be considered.
Can I have the monitoring officer, please?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that isn't actually a point of order that was raised by Councillor Franks. I know it's been addressed, but it doesn't constitute a point of order and didn't require a response.
Thanks. My apologies, Mayor.
Thank you for clarifying that, monitoring officer. Can we have Councillor Perry, please?
Hi, yeah. I'm wondering if the leader will be voting with me to send this back. I completely share her thoughts on scrutiny and that there's a lack of constructive feedback in scrutiny, mostly from the Labour group. And I do hope the Labour group will try to be more constructive and work with your leader in scrutiny so we get more positive feedback for officers. I'm unhappy with the documents. There's lots of the use of the word sustainability, but there's no substance. The substance is all missing. The actual direction is really missing. And we all know that the shortage of resources, and I would agree that that's got a lot to do with Westminster. But I don't think this document is ready to go up to public consultation. I think that as a council, we can and we should do better. In fact, we must do better than this document, because we know that the members of the public will now see it and they will scrutinise it, and they will be disappointed in the lack of certain detail and the lack of direction, the lack of substance. I know we can do better. I feel we are rushing ahead with this because there's never any consequences for us. There's a lack of accountability sometimes. So let's go back, spend a bit more time on it, perhaps have some more focus groups within the elected representatives of the members of the public, and give them a document that's interesting, that creates a picture of a brighter future, which is really meaningful to them, which puts their health and well-being at the heart of it, the development of the services that they're after. The active travel is at the heart of it. New facilities, whether it's a village green playground or allotments, in the heart of it, those things that we are missing with the local or the large developers plan on the fringes. So I'll be voting against this, and I hope that cross-party, and by cross-party I mean all parties, will think carefully. We take our time and we get this right, so that when our residents see what we produce for them, they can say, a lot of thought's gone into that. At the moment, the detail is missing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just go a bit into the sort of the wider context of the replacement LDP, because one of the challenges that I feel that we have is the relative lack of progress on the the strategic development plan across the the Cardiff capital region, and particularly that affects us in the Vale of Glamorgan because of the interrelationship between both the home and labour market between Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan, but also therefore the changes in the population that we have as a result of that. The question for us perhaps is, what is the purpose of the LDP? And I've heard both of the Labour members who've spoken so far talk about the need for affordable homes, yet that's not necessarily quite being answered by the situation that we have. I did smirk at Councillor Haynes earlier, who I think wanted to move towards a command economy style housing, which was quite unconservative of him. It was very interesting. I mean, what we have in front of us is fundamentally our officers have determined this is the level of house building which has largely come from volume builders over a period of a decade, and therefore that is what the market sustains and creates in the Vale of Glamorgan. It's why that we are building faster, more frequently in other parts of Wales in terms of the multiples that we've got, both in terms of actual numbers, which have fed through in our council tax over the years, and in terms of, in comparative terms to other places as well. But that migration from Cardiff into the Vale, and I've got many good friends who've moved from Cardiff, but that has an impact. That means that some of the house pricing has gone up faster than other parts of Wales. It also means they've taken up some of the more desirable properties, and it's actually meant that, well, that some of the challenges that we faced around the 2011 to 26 LDP in terms of meeting the housing needs of the Vale of Glamorgan have not been resolved because house prices have gone up, rents have gone up, scarcity, etc. And those are not necessarily being met, as I see it, within this document. We talked, I think, Councillor Sivignan talked about the local housing market assessment, which is for once 1,250 affordable homes a year, and yet we're talking about 2,000 over the whole period, and large numbers of those are intended to come from the from Section 106. We need to decide if Section 106 and housing is going to be our priority, because there are things that come forward in which Section 106 is not our priority. We have a choice, I think, that's been put forward to us where these are the identified sites. Actually, there's a lot of smaller scale sites that will be coming through perhaps as windfall, but should already really be identified as such. I appreciate that more detail will be fleshed out perhaps in the deposit plan when that comes forward, but that really needs to be with us right now. There are lots of things that are en route already. Next week we'll have 228 units at Leckwith Quay being discussed. We know there are plans for plans have been submitted for the college site in Barry. We know that there's been a pre-application consultation for 65 units on the Mole as part of the marina. We don't know, I've not been told, but we've talked about Calcutta Sports Centre and the plans to move facilities from there to the Buttrolls, presumably leaving that for housing. These are all large parts of the of the development plan that I feel should be mentioned in reference to this point, rather than being put in some lump where we're going to create some entire new community on the outskirts of town with no area of sustainable local transport. I do feel, in talking about the preferred strategy, one of the things that seems to have been highlighted is the reliance upon the train line. And I think Councillor Campbell pointed out earlier, and Councillor Haynes to some extent mentioned that, well, actually there's only one train per hour in each direction that runs through Roos and Llantwit Major, and we've been waiting more than a decade for that second train, the half-hour train, to be brought forward. We put they did the maintenance work at Barry Station, nearly 9 years ago, to make that happen, but it's not taken place. Whereas on the flip side, Culverhouse Cross, St Nicholas and Cowbridge have a half-hourly bus X2. That's no less approachable over public transport. In fact, it's more approachable public transport going into the Cardiff labour market than it is going to Llantwit Major and to St Athan and Roos. Similarly, we need to think about what maintenance sustainability looks like in smaller places around the Vale. Older members, or rather not others, members with a longer institutional memory will recall that we decided not, or it was suggested not to have buildings. Thank you, Waycock Cross, and instead to have those around different places around the Vale to maintain sustainability of those different places. Now, I think that those things need to be considered, because we have to think about who this is for, and is this for people of the Vale of Glamorgan so that they can have housing? And if that's the case of this, then I think that we need to think again, and we need to think about how we can develop these in a better and more sustainable way. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just a few observations, really. Many of you have criticised the process and looking at what we are trying to do. But remember, if we don't have a local development plan, we could have unfettered development. And I'm sure no councillor here wants that. We want to have control over our land and control over our land use. And yes, I agree, Councillor Johnson. Demand in the Vale is very high, and this is why we have to expand our housing. As you rightly said, house prices have gone up considerably in the Vale of Glamorgan, much more than other areas, maybe the exception of Monmouth. And clearly it's because it's a desirable place for lots and lots of people who want to live here. And yes, we need to look at developments which are very large to develop infrastructure. And the way you get infrastructure is through 106 money. So that we can develop new schools, we can improve our transport facilities and transport infrastructure. And that's why we're looking at big development sites in order to get the money so that we can do this. And the final point is we are having a cost of living crisis. Money is in short supply. We do need to find sources of money so we have more, and I would use the word sustainable communities. Because yes, I'm a great believer in sustainability. And that's why if you create small towns or small villages or small areas which are sustainable, people are happier, there's less crime, there's less problems, and we do need younger people moving it into the Vale of Glamorgan in order to create jobs, create employment, so they can sustain the older population. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. If nobody else wishes to speak, Councillor Hooper asked for a recorded vote. Do I have 6 members to support this, please?
Chair, could I just summarise?
Yes. Of course. Councillor Sivanyanam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you, members, for your comments. They will be noted, and I hope that people will feed those comments into the consultation. What was very interesting about tonight's contributions, on the one hand, we have the Conservative group criticising this strategy for planning for growth and being ambitious. And then on the other hand, we have members saying that we're not ambitious enough. So I'm not going to apologise for planning for growth. We won't have the infrastructure we need in health, in transport, if we don't plan for growth and if we don't have growth. So I won't make any apologies for that. And this strategy will enable this council to deliver our objectives. It will help us achieve sustainable economic growth through regeneration. This plan isn't just about new development, but also protecting and enhancing the most important parts of the natural and built environment in the Vale. And it will be crucial in responding to the nature and climate emergencies that the council has declared. Now, I really do hope that members will feed into this consultation, because this is a strategy. This is a strategy for our vision of the Vale in 2036. This isn't a planning application, and this isn't the plan. And I'm very confident and assured that this strategy is ready to go for public consultation, Chair. And so I would move that we move to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sivanyanam.
Sorry, I do apologise, Chair. I should mention, because Councillor Champion raised this. I'm happy to announce that we are going to extend the consultation period to 10 weeks from 8 weeks. I apologise, I should have mentioned that earlier.
That's fine. Thank you, Councillor Sivanyanam. I believe we do have 6 members to support the recorded vote. I'll just check. Then I'll go to the Chief Executive to do a roll call, please, for the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I can just explain, there are a number of recommendations before you. The substantive one is around the preferred strategy and also the delivery agreement. I know one member mentioned earlier that there was no issue with the delivery agreement, and the vast majority of the discussion tonight has been on the preferred strategy. But if we vote for or against the recommendations, clearly if the preferred strategy falls, the delivery agreement would automatically fall because it would affect the timescale that we've set out in that delivery agreement. So I hope that's clear for all members. So in effect, you're voting either for the recommendation or against the recommendations as set out before you. So if I can start with Councillor Anne Asprey, please.
Against.
Councillor Julie Aviett.
For.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
For.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
For.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Against the recommendation.
Councillor Ian Buckley.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
Against.
Councillor George Carroll.
Against.
Councillor Charles Champion, please.
Against.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Against.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Against.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
Against.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Ernest.
Against.
Councillor Chris Franks.
Against.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
For.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
For.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
For.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
Against.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
For.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
For.
Councillor William Hennessy.
Against.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
Against.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
And Arabin against.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
For.
Councillor Gwyn John.
For.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
And Arabin against.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
Against.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
For.
Councillor Jane Norman.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Helen Payne.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
For.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
For.
Councillor Ian Perry.
Against.
Councillor Joanna Prothero.
For.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianum.
For.
Councillor Carrie Stallard.
For.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
For.
Councillor Rhys Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
For.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
For.
And Councillor Nicholas Wood.
Against.
Okay, Mayor, I make that 29 for, 20 against and no abstentions.
Thank you. I'll just check with that.
And I agree.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Thank you. So those recommendations are approved. Thank you, members. For the next council meeting of the 20th of November 2023, I shall go into the housekeeping again. I would like to remind members that under the Council's multi-locations policy, this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's website as soon as possible after the meeting. Can I also ask all members, except for Cabinet members and group leaders, that your mics and cameras are turned off until you are invited by myself to speak. Should you wish to speak, would you please indicate by raising the hand function on Teams. If this function ceases to work during the meeting, please indicate in the chat facility your wish to speak. With regard to voting on recommendations, if there is no dissent to a recommendation, I will accept the silence as agreement. Should a vote, however, be required, it is my intention that all members be asked individually for their vote. If during the meeting you have technical difficulties, please let the Democratic Services Officer know as soon as possible. Thank you. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, please. Councillor Carroll.
Councillors Russell Godfrey, Robert Fisher and Christine Cave.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Councillor Stephen William.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burnett.
Councillor Naomi Marshalsea.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett. And move next, agenda item 2, to hear the roll call of members and to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interests under the Council Code of Conduct. Chief Executive, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So as per normal procedure, if you indicate your presence and also whether you've got any interest, and if so, the nature of that interest, please. We start with Councillor Anne Asprey.
Presennol a dim byd I ddatgan.
Councillor Julie Aviett.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Present.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Buckley.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor George Carroll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Charles Champion.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Anthony Ernest.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Chris Franks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor William Hennessy.
Present with nothing to declare.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Hooper.
Presennol a dim byd I ddatgan.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
Presennol a dim byd I ddatgan.
Councillor Susan Lloyd-Selby.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Julie Lynch-Wilson.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Jane Norman.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Presennol and nothing to declare.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Perry.
Yeah, I'm present.
No. Have you anything to declare, Councillor Perry?
Undecided.
What do you mean?
Okay, I'll come back to you.
Have you read the documents? I've read the documents and I'm undecided.
I'll come back to you once you've made a decision before the end of the roll call, please. Councillor Joanna Prythro.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ruba Sivanianam.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Caris Dallard.
And presennol and dim byd i ddatgan.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Rhys Thomas.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Present and nothing to declare.
And Councillor Nicholas Wood.
Present and nothing to declare.
So if I can go back and ask Councillor Perry if he does have an interest, and if so, what is the nature of that interest, please?
Well, I can't declare no interest. I guess that I'm an elected member of the Vale Glamorgan Council, representing the people who elected me and those who didn't elect me in my ward. And there appears to be a change of the constitution to inhibit my work. So that is kind of an interest.
I can be of assistance, Councillor Perry, because the constitution is a matter that is an issue that can be discussed and voted upon by council, then you do not have an interest. But I think the monitoring officer has put her hand up, so she'll be able to advise.
Yes,
and hopefully it's on all fours with what I've just said. Otherwise, I'm in trouble.
Thank you. No, I do agree with that, and that applies equally to all other members who have not declared an interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. That completes the roll call. So agenda item 3.
Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Agenda item 3 is amendments to the Council's constitution. And I'll hand over to the leader, please, to present the report. Councillor Burnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The report outlines proposals for amendments to the Council's constitution in respects of sections 4 and 26 in relation to officer delegations and also to Council's rules of procedure and debate. And these are suggested in the interests of good governance and consistency of approach. The proposed amendments to certain officer delegations can be found at paragraphs 2.2 and 2.3 of the report, and are fairly straightforward. And the paragraphs 2.4 to 2.8 of the report set out proposals to amend current constitutional arrangements relating to the rules of procedure and debate at ordinary council meetings. In regard to the order of business, questions on notice by members and motions on notice submitted by members. So along with fellow group leaders, I met with the monitoring officer at her request on the 29th of September to discuss suggested amendments to the Constitution. And as a result of that meeting, the proposals are being made having regard to those discussions. So these have been brought forward by the monitoring officer and also the Democratic Services team. So in the spirit of the Council's public participation strategy, it's proposed that the order of business under section 4.11 of the Constitution for ordinary meetings of full Council be amended to allow questions received from the public to be received earlier in the transaction of business on the agenda. I think we've all sat through meetings where members of the public, unless we brought them up the agenda, have been sitting there or been waiting for hours to hear a response to their questions. So it's therefore proposed that public questions be dealt with after the standing agenda item announcements going forward. In the interest of fairness and proportionality, it's recommended the receipt of public questions be amended to introduce a requirement that only one question per requester or organisation is permitted, because obviously there's historically a time limit on that, and it was to ensure that there is equity. It's further proposed that member questions on notice be brought into alignment with the same period governing motions on notice, being that a member be required to give at least 10 clear days notice, and that includes weekends, prior to the day of the meeting, in writing to the proper officer. And each question submitted will also be required to be countersigned by the relevant political group leader, or in their absence, the relevant group secretary. And that's before they can be submitted to the proper officer by the deadline. So, having regard to discussions that took place at the group leader meeting in September, the report proposes that the methodology used for each political group's allocation of questions is based on the same calculation used for the allocation of entitlement of seats on committees for each council's political groups, and takes into account independent members not affiliated to a political group. So the report proposes a maximum number of questions set at 30. And if I can just find that. So if you look in paragraph 2.7, that shows how that is worked out, so that, for Labour, the figure would be rounded down to 13. For Conservatives, it would be rounded up to 7. Plaid Cymru rounded down to 4. Llantrwit First Independents rounded down to 2. And independent members would have 1 each, which is actually rounded up to 1. It's also being proposed to introduce a maximum time period for consideration of member questions, including supplementary questions. There was discussion that it would be 30 alongside members of the public, but actually it was decided after discussion to propose 45 minutes. And any questions that remain unanswered will be addressed in writing post meeting, and be appended to the minutes of the meeting, with no unanswered questions being held over to next council. The premise behind that is actually we try to be as open a council as we can. Members have access both to myself, to cabinet members, and to officers, and quite often questions are asked at council that have already been asked previously. So it's actually being able to move the procedure forward. With regards to motions on notice, it's proposed that the time period for each motion on notice be 30 minutes unless one or more amendments are moved. And if it's an important motion that's being moved, then actually I think that we all, if we are more disciplined in terms of our contributions, etc., then it could make for really good discussions of motions in 30 minutes. But unless there are amendments, one or more amendments are moved, in such circumstances, the mayor could extend that time to 45 minutes, or at the mayor's discretion as chair, if the debate was still in full flow, that they would have the discretion to extend the time period to no more than 45 minutes. Furthermore, it's proposed that motions for notice, for which notice has been given, will be listed on the agenda in the order in which notice is received, unless the member giving notice states in writing that they propose to move it to a later meeting or withdraw it. The number of ordinary motions would be limited to a maximum of 2 motions at each meeting, and should more than 2 motions be submitted, the mayor as chair would decide which motions are to be taken following consultation with the relevant political group leaders. So that would be a conversation between the mayor and the group leaders of whose groups had submitted motions. And the factors that would be considered in deciding that are detailed in the report. In the event of a motion set out in the summons not being moved, either by the member who gave notice or by some other member on their behalf at the end of the meeting, unless postponed by consent of the council, so it would be treated as withdrawn. So that's fairly straightforward in terms of hopefully taking our meetings forward to being a much more sort of open and transparent form of council, and demonstrate, I would hope, increased democracy in action. There are two recommendations set out in the report, and one is, I've just actually, sorry, I need to go back. I haven't mentioned that the order of questions being asked, because they would be asked in turn. The order would be set out by the group leaders in terms of, if, say, a group leader, the group put in 7 questions, the group leader would decide the order, the priority order of their questions to be asked. So that would come down to them. So if I can just go through the recommendations, and there's 2 before us. And firstly, that the changes to relevant officer delegations are set out in paragraphs 2.2 and 2.3 of the report be approved, and that section 26 of the council's constitution be amended accordingly. And secondly, that the proposed amendments to section 4 of the council's constitution as set out in appendices A to C of the report be approved, and that the council's constitution be amended accordingly. And I'd move.
Thank you, Leader. Have a seconder, please.
Yep, I'll second those, Mayor, those recommendations, and reserve the right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Marnie, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to comment on the questions thing and also the motions. It's about time we addressed this. I've been on about it for ages, as have others. I mean, ludicrous that some of the questions, the amount of questions that solo members have asked. But I do have concerns at this. I think, unless I missed something in the actual explanation, that if you have a party with, shall we say, 13, that only one question can be asked by one member. I appreciate this can be abused by them sharing it out amongst their friends, if you like, or colleagues, shall we say. But I would suggest that they should only have one question each. My other concern is this: 45 minutes. That's about 1.5 minutes per question if there's 30 questions. Now, most of this time seems to be taken up by written answers by officers, using the good old local authority. Never use one word when you can use 10. That'll just eat up everything. I don't see how you can put a time limit on it. Hopefully, reduced numbers of questions would do that to a certain degree. But I've always been appalled at this council, and I have expressed it before, that, okay, I don't want to be at a 5, 6, 7, 8 hour meeting, but if I have to be, I'll be there. And what I've observed time and time again on questions, members can't wait to get out their seats, not even listening, having the courtesy to listen to the full set of questions. If it takes more than 45 minutes, it takes more than 45 minutes. And to add in there then, well, some of them, if we take too long, and these long-winded answers to many of the questions, then it'll be answered in private. That defeats the whole point of the thing. And then we go to motions. Motions, they'll take as long as they take. And if any member here, or listening on the laptops or whatever, isn't happy with that, consider your position. I've given a commitment to be as long as it takes to debate something. Yes, I can get fed up sometimes when there's inane questions coming in, that, or I consider them to be inane, and statements. But if you're not prepared to stay and discuss whatever's on the agenda for however long that takes, whether that be short or long, then consider your position and pack it in right now. There should be no limit on what it is going to be. Going back to the questions thing, hopefully with reduced numbers, and if people take it sensibly and groups take it sensibly, then hopefully it won't take much more than 45 minutes to an hour, shall we say, maximum. And one other question that might be clarified for me. It was so important. I've actually forgotten what it was now. I've forgotten it, and I don't have an opportunity to come back. It couldn't have been that important anyway. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As referred to in the report, there was a meeting between the monitoring officer and the 4 party group leaders at the end of September, where these proposals were presented to us. I made it clear to the monitoring officer and other group leaders that I disagreed with all of the proposals being put forward for changing Section 4 of the Constitution. So I'm both surprised and disappointed that it's been brought to Council in this way for debate and decision tonight. I should point out, for anybody who doesn't know, that of course, as well as being the Plaid Cymru Group leader, I'm also the chair of the Democratic Services Committee, a position which is elected by full council at the annual general meeting. This council operates in a slightly unique way, all councils do. We only have around 5 full council meetings a year. It's why actually we have to have a number of special meetings put on, because we simply don't have meetings taking place during the year. Our meetings don't go on for especially long. I had a look at some of the most recent videos that we have online. Meeting in September took just under 2 hours. Meeting in April took just over 2 hours. The budget meeting was the longest meeting, 4.5 hours. Meeting in December last year took 2.5 hours. But we are being asked to reduce the number of questions and the opportunities for backbenchers to have a voice in a way which seems unfair and inefficient. We spoke earlier, or it was discussed earlier, about how everyone should be contributing in scrutiny. Everybody should be raising their voice and talking about things. Yet here we are having time limits placed on the ability to speak, which will inevitably impact upon the ability of backbenchers and of independent members to have their voices heard during meetings. Councillor Marnie said, well, if someone's got something to say, then they should be allowed to say it. If we have a motion going forward, if we have a debate, we have a time limit on it, and we get stopped after 5 minutes. So there's nothing there that prevents us from doing that. I think this is a solution looking for a problem, because this council could be meeting monthly if we thought that there was more items that needed to be discussed and we didn't have enough time. In actual fact, we probably have very little on the next agenda item, apart from perhaps the accounts that's going to be coming forward. Why are we having a meeting tonight with 3 different items when we've got a full council in a fortnight? I'd also like to say that I disagree with the suggestion that members of the public should have their questions answered before councillors. There is precious little opportunity for councillors to speak and to ask questions and get an answer from political officers, and this is in full view, recorded, and hopefully in proper hybrid, the best way and best place to do it. So I'm disappointed this has been brought forward like this. I don't think it's democratic. I think I hate to say it, but it feels like it's gagging people. It's not, I don't think, the correct way to do it, to try and push things through, which seems to have a political side to it. I would be quite happy either cross-party or perhaps members of the Democratic Services Committee having a working party or task and finish to discuss any changes to the Constitution that impact upon our members' ability to scrutinise, to ask questions and to get responses and speak in public. If somebody would be willing to do that, if that would be better than having a vote on this tonight, because I don't think that this is the right way forward, either in process form or in terms of the impact that we'll have. And I'm sure we'll end up spending far more time discussing things, because a couple of motions later, and we haven't done many motions recently, but a couple of motions, suddenly we're doing a lot more talking and a lot less decision making when we could be doing something more useful in these meetings. So I'd like to move that we I accept the changes to I think it's section 26 of the Constitution, but I'd be happy to take comments from other councillors regarding section 4, but I would like to move that we have a working party is created to discuss amendments to section 4 rather than these things being voted upon tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Champion, please.
I think possibly some councillors have made a rod for their own back, and they'll say no more. But on, I think there might need to be a bit of a correction on 2.3, paragraph 1 and paragraph 3 mention primary, middle and secondary schools. And I know for certainly we have a through school in Cowbridge, and I believe there's a through school, which is a Welsh school. And so they don't seem to be mentioned within the wording.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor Carroll, please.
Before I begin, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to clarify, did Councillor Johnson table an amendment?
I'm not aware of that.
Yes, I did, Mayor.
You did. Thank you.
I'm sure Councillor Hodges will be seconding me if he gets a chance to jump in and then speak later.
It should have been seconded at the time, but I'll just ask if it's allowed. I'll just check with the monitor officer, please.
Yes, it can be seconded sort of after another speaker has spoken, but for clarity, it'd be worth it being seconded at this point, so that members are aware of the amendment on the table.
Thank you, monitor officer. Thank you. So that's seconded. Councillor,
I'm happy to second it, but who has seconded it?
Currently, nobody has, Marianne, because Nick hasn't turned his mute off yet.
Well, I'm happy to second it, Chair, if that's acceptable.
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, can I just say, Councillor Nick Hodges here, my internet dropped out. I just got back in, but I did follow it on my phone at the same time, so I've heard what's going on. It's just I couldn't respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Haynes, please.
That sounds dodgy to me.
I believe Councillor Carroll was speaking.
Councillor Carroll, sorry, you're still on. Sorry, my mistake.
Somebody's got their microphone on who thinks that what Councillor Hodges just said is dodgy.
No, I think they talked about the heavy breathing.
Okay.
So go back to Councillor Carroll, please.
Again, before I begin, Madam Mayor, are we speaking to the amendment or the motion?
Just checking. Yeah, just the monitor officer, please.
Yes, as there's an amendment on the table, it would be to the amendment, but general comments can be made, but it is with regards to the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, to clarify procedurally, if I could reserve my right to speak on the motion, but I would like to speak in support of Councillor Johnson's amendment. I think that it would be far more preferable for these plans to be agreed on a cross-party basis rather than presented to full council as a fait accompli, as we've seen this evening. In terms of the general motion, Madam Mayor, I've already set out this evening several areas in which this council is not delivering for residents. And put simply, its performance is not good enough, and that is a view that is widely shared. Scrutiny of the authority's performance is therefore paramount, and it's vital that opportunities to do so are not curtailed. It is against this backdrop that I'm deeply concerned with the package of amendments to the Council's constitution that have been put before us this evening, and that it's for this reason that I will be supporting the amendment. I've made clear in previous meetings with other group leaders that I do have concerns with regard to the way meetings of the council are governed, and these echo some of the comments made by Councillor Marnie. And indeed, I would welcome moves, as I have made clear previously, to make the meetings more focused so that they are not dominated by a small group of individuals. But I do believe that the amendments put forward by this Labour administration go far beyond what I would consider to be sensible changes to bring more focus to meetings, and instead they amount to an apparently deliberate attempt to limit scrutiny of the administration's decisions. I will speak on the proposed amendments to motions to full council later, assuming that the amendment fails, but I would wish to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Haynes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on the amendment and I reserve the right to speak on the full motion later. As a Deputy Chair of Democratic, I can do nothing but support this amendment. These motions should have come to Democratic at very least for us to have a look at them. I think democracy is being ebbed away slowly by this sort of careful restriction of speech, I suppose I will put it. But I will come back on the main motion if this amendment fails. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor John, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Luntford First members are all in favour of supporting the recommendations. It doesn't stop members asking questions of Cabinet members outside of these questions. Now, 45 minutes is quite an ample time for questions as such. I mean, when we've been carrying on in some meetings, I've never had a problem with any questions asked me, but 37 questions, double that amount. We got 74 questions with the supplementals. Now, I mean, some of these are doubled up. Groups sometimes ask the same question. The same question might be asked by Conservative and Plaid, a similar question with a similar answer, which we've just heard from the leader say sometimes, I've just referred you to question so-and-so for the reply. No, I honestly think that we should give this a try. We should give this a try and see how it works out, because we got to remember that across the board in Wales, a lot of councils only allow half an hour or even 20 minutes. Admitted, they do have sometimes, some councils, for example, Bridgend, have more council meetings than cabinet meetings. But at the same time, I think we should give this a try. I think that there's no reason why any member of the council can't send an email to the cabinet member and copy it to all the other councillors. I mean, that's another way around this, but quite simply, with these meetings, particularly you take the budget meeting, as Councillor Johnson's just said, 4.5 hours, 5 hours maybe. I mean, back in the chamber, I've seen them longer. You know, I've seen them go on from 6 till 11:45. So, I mean, quite honestly, it does. I mean, Councillor Marnie's just said about members walking out. Well, I think that's disrespectful, and I agree with him. But at the same time, I think some members are really worn out by that time of night. Your questions from maybe 10 o'clock on, and the main business has been dealt with for the night. I do really feel that we should be giving this a go, and let's see where we go from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John. Councillor Campbell, please.
I think as an independent member, I was a little bit shocked to see this. I've never felt like being independent has been a disadvantage in this council. We're all elected members, and I've always felt that I could talk to cabinet members and the leader and anybody within this council, even though I don't belong to a political group. But seeing that I wasn't even consulted or even had a conversation with anybody about this, and that my name is literally being shoved at the bottom of a list, and that within those 45 minutes, my questions might not even be answered within a public forum, is just really shocking to me. So I think that, you know, the amendment that Councillor Johnson has brought forward is really, really pertinent to me and speaks to me, because just to think that questions might just be filibustered in that time, and I might not even be able to speak in a public forum ever again. It's really, really shocking just because I'm independent. It's not really fair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Hodges, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, I support the amendments. This is the right, just and proper thing to do. There's many an issue here on questions to council, motions, and what's proposed. Let's start off, shall we? Limited question time. Right. Well, with the majority of the questions being able to be asked by the leading groups, and it's two, that's Llantwit Mob and the Labour group, they can fill up the question time quite happily themselves. Also, Cabinet members are fully able, if they want to avoid publicly debating an issue of great concern, they can filibuster. They can make an answer to a question long-winded and really drag out the time. That is a great concern to me. Let's have a look as well at various other issues. Would the Cabinet member agree with me? That might be Labour's favourite question in the future. We hear that in the House of Commons all the time. What a wonderful way to filibuster and drown out opposition. And finally, I'll just have to talk about motions. To limit and then give the power to take away that limit to a certain extent on motions to the chair or mayor, that's amazing. We've had two substantial motions tonight of great import to us as a council and the people of the Vale of Glamorgan. They didn't take 30 minutes. Lots of members wanted to talk on it because they have legitimate concerns. Are you going to limit me on what I can say? Are you going to limit my group on what they can say? This is wrong. This should have gone through Democratic. It certainly would have when I was chair of Democratic. We've got an excellent chair and vice chair of Democratic now. Let them debate it. Let them come forward with suggestions on how this can be done. This is government from the top down. This isn't democracy. This is diktat. Please stop it and let's get to some proper democracy here in this chamber. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Lisbonette, leader, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a comment on the amendment, not on the main motion. Which, if that goes forward, I will take my opportunity to summarise on that. Just a couple of clarifications here. I have to say I don't totally recognise Councillor Johnson's recollection. I knew that going along the one person per one question per member didn't gain support, but my understanding about going along Widdicombe rules was supported. I also understand that there was a consensus from Councillor Carroll, but I stand corrected if that's not the case. Just for clarification, in terms of the order of questions, it would be one question from each group in turn, and all four independent members would get to ask their question in the first round. So it would not be a question of people being left until the end and not having a voice. And the other thing is that we've had full contributions from people on other agenda items tonight. They were not motions as we are discussing. These are motions put before council, and as such, those motions put before council, normally people prepare what they're going to say in advance. They quite often don't last 5 minutes, and there are very few questions, unless you have situations which we have had on many occasions where numerous people take up 5 minutes to say the same thing. And I would suggest that that's not necessarily the most constructive use of time. I think most people would appreciate a concise and well-argued debate, which I would suggest would go through in that time. I hadn't heard any dissent previously. I'm quite happy for a review to be undertaken by Democratic Services Committee at a point agreed on their forward work plan, but having the Democratic Services team having consulted numerous local authorities to find out what happens elsewhere, I would be voting for this motion against this amendment to actually try it and see how it works.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Perry, please. Oh, sorry. Before you come in, Councillor Perry, can I ask the Monitor Officer to come in, please?
Yes, thank you. Just running through the terms of reference of Democratic Services Committee, the report has been brought to Council because it falls within the terms of reference of Council as opposed to Democratic Services Committee. So that would require an extension to the terms of reference of Democratic Services Committee, just for members' information.
Thank you, Monitor Officer. Councillor Perry, please.
Try it and see how it works. Yeah. So obviously I have a bit of a background, and I'm just speaking now on the amendment, and I'm speaking in support of the amendment. And if the amendment is lost, I will speak again. If that's okay, because I believe that's the rules. You know, similar questions by different groups. Well, it does happen that in the different factions of our council, different groups don't speak with one another, and that could then be left to the officers to bring those people together and say, you've got very similar questions. That could happen potentially, and then you get over that problem of similar questions. Members may or may not be aware of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act of 2021. This was passed in the Senedd, and includes laws to increase participation at town and community council meetings by members of the public. So if we don't amend it, we are kind of saying, well, we want members of the public to participate less. They may have one question, not two, perhaps three. That's reducing participation by members of the public. I may ask a few questions. I don't always get good answers. Sometimes I get web links, whether it's by email, because I do ask questions by email. If it's to a cabinet member, I don't necessarily want to get one back, because often I don't get one back. Some officers the same. Or I get a web link which is 6 months out of date, and it has questions of ongoing work, and there's no update on that ongoing work in the past 6 months, which is disappointing and not really acceptable. So I will support the amendment, because this needs to be thought about very, very carefully. We don't want to Putinise our democracy, do we? By restricting voices, restricting scrutiny. And the leader keeps talking about scrutiny and wanting more scrutiny, yet this does exactly the opposite by restricting elected members, elected representatives of the public, as well as the public who wish to speak directly with their written question. So I will support the amendment. I'd much rather we just chuck this rubbish out, but I will be voting to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Cowp, please.
Yes, thank you. I think my thing's probably a question. My understanding is that Councillor Johnson suggested two things. First of all, that section 4 is totally removed. That's one amendment. And he also suggested, I think, that a cross-party working group was set up to discuss this. So I think those are the two things. And just one thing I wanted to check as well. One of the councillors mentioned that several councillors may ask similar questions, but isn't it a possibility, because we won't always know what other people are putting in, we put the questions in, isn't it a possibility that cabinet members would say, oh, for example, 3 councillors have asked very similar questions, we're going to take them as one and answer them and answer all aspects of that question. They don't need to keep repeating themselves. They can. Is that a possibility?
Thank you, Councillor Cowp. Councillor Marnie, please.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking on the amendment, not the motion, I've already spoken on the motion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does irritate me time after time, the complete and utter hypocrisy of not only have we had today the award of a good council on the self-assessment, but you're always boasting about being the best council in Wales. Yet when it suits, oh, we consulted other councils. Well, wouldn't that mean that you've consulted councils that you regard to being of inferior performance to your own? So that's a bit ludicrous, isn't it, to be honest with you? Yeah, firstly, I'd like to echo something I said before. Us independents, when we were told that we were going to be consulted on things because we don't go to group leader meetings, totally ignored. That's not fair and ludicrous as well. And in this particular case, as a perfect example why the independents should have been consulted, as others, is surely you could have had a welter of suggestions, and then people be allowed to peruse them at their leisure and say, hang on, that's a great idea, that is. You haven't done any of that. You just shoved this on us with all the faults that's been pointed out to be people. I do repeat that this question system has been abused over and over and over again, and we could go back and count up the number of questions asked by individual councillors. They've been allowed to do it, but it's ludicrous. I've seen 10, 12 questions by the same councillor, and that is absolutely ludicrous. So it does have to be addressed, but to go about it in this way is so ham-fisted that it almost defies belief. So I'm sure out of 54 people, well, I could probably cut out a few of those. You could get some decent suggestions that everybody might think, what a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? But to do that, you need to ask people beforehand, didn't you? So that's just my comment on the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. I will just ask the Chief Executive to take us through a vote. I'm not sure what kind of vote.
Can I, in doing that, just clarify what I've written down here with Councillor Johnson, who put the amendment forward. So what I've written down here is that, excuse me, in essence, we're talking about recommendation 2, not recommendation 1, and that instead of recommendation 2 as written, it's that a cross-party working group be asked to consider the way forward, and that in the interim, no changes are made to section 4 of the council's constitution.
In effect, I mean, you know, the working
slightly
group,
differently worded, but
that covers the meaning of it. Is that a cross-party working group considers section 4 of the constitution. But whatever your wording there is, I think probably covers what I'm saying there, Rob. I don't think I asked it at the time, but I mean, is it worth having a recorded vote?
Yes.
We need 6 hands.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to read out the roll call regardless. But...
Yeah, exactly. May as well include it in the minutes.
Yeah, that's enough. So, just for completeness, then we are talking about the amendment. The amendment is that a cross-party working group be asked to consider section 4 of the council's constitution, and in the interim, no changes are made to the same. I'm going to ask members if they support the amendment, that being what I've just read out, or if they are against the amendment. So I will go first of all to, and you'll need to bear with me because I think I have just, yes, I have. I'm going to get my roll call open again, or else I won't be able to go through the list of names. So if you please bear with me. Okay, we will start with Councillor Anne Asprey, please. For or against the amendment?
I am for Councillor Johnson's amendment.
Thank you. And I should also say there's the option of abstaining as well. Councillor Julie Aviat, please.
For.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
Against.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
For the amendment.
Councillor Ian Buckley.
Against.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
Against the amendment.
Councillor
Stupid
Samantha
girl.
Campbell.
For.
Councillor George Carroll.
For.
Councillor Charles Champion.
For the amendment.
Councillor Janice Charles.
For the amendment.
Councillor Millie Collins.
For the amendment.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
For the amendment.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
For the amendment.
Councillor Anthony Ernest.
For the amendment.
Councillor Chris Franks.
For.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Against.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Abstain.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
For the amendment.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
Against.
Councillor William Hennessy.
For the amendment.
Councillor Nick Hodges. Councillor Hodges. I'll come back. Councillor Mark Cooper.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
Against.
Chief Executive, you also missed out Councillor Hamilton, sorry.
Have I?
No, yes, sorry, Councillor Hamilton, yes.
Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Hamilton. Thank you, Karen. Councillor Hamilton.
Against the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Apologies. Councillor Gwyn John, I think I was on next.
Yeah, against.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Johnson.
Obliged gwelliant. In favour of the amendment.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
Against.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
For.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Jane Norman.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Helen Payne.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Ian Perry.
For the amendment.
Councillor Joanna Prothero.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianen.
Against.
Councillor Caris Dallard.
Yn erbyn. Against.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Rhys Thomas.
For.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
Against.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Against.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Against.
Councillor Nicholas Wood.
For the amendment.
And I'll just check if Councillor Hodges can hear me now.
I can, certainly. I've been kicked out 3 times. Yes, I'm for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges.
Chief Executive, can I just come in, please? I'd like to change mine to against, please.
I don't know if we can do that. Can I just check with the monitoring officer for information?
The Constitution is silent on that, but on the figures it's 21 for, 27 against and 1 abstention. So the amendment is lost. So it's a little bit academic anyway.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Debbie. That's exactly what I had as well. Okay.
Thank you.
So the amendment is lost. So the debate now moves back to the substantive motion.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Franks, please.
I don't want to cause any embarrassment, but was your vote counted? Was it changed? No. Okay.
Just for clarity, I did not change it, Councillor Franks.
Thank you.
Councillor Franks, are you something else? No. Councillor Carroll, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So I now speak on the substantive motion unamended, regrettably. I shan't repeat the comments that I made earlier for the sake of time and brevity, so instead we'll focus on motions, which I think is an important part of the proposal this evening and one that's potentially very damaging. Now, if we look at the proposals before us this evening on motions, there are at present, as we know, no limits as to the number of motions an individual councillor or indeed a political group can bring forward. And as things stand, there don't seem to be any issues with this mechanism being abused. Yet here we are faced with a proposal that provides opposition groups in particular with no guarantee that they will be able to table motions in future. And I'll explain why on that point. Under the proposal before us this evening, a maximum of 2 motions will be permitted each meeting. No provision is made to ensure that political groups are allocated a certain number of motions during the municipal year, and indeed it is at the Mayor's discretion. So ultimately one group could find every single motion they table rejected. This is neither in the interests of democracy nor good governance. Now, I'm not for one moment questioning the Mayor's impartiality in the role, but we should remember that, unlike other councils, this authority typically selects its mayor from the ruling group. We've heard other concerns about filibustering already this evening. The mayor doesn't rotate among parties, so from a perception point of view, placing such a large amount of power as to what is debated in full council at the discretion of the mayor is not a good look. And indeed, it places them in an impossible position, whichever party they may come from. Now, given this council's record of ignoring scrutiny, I fear that residents will view these proposals as a power grab on the part of the Labour administration. That is a perception that should be avoided at all costs, and for these reasons, as a package, these proposals must be rejected.
Councillor Carroll. Councillor Haynes, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't repeat what Councillor Carroll said on motions. I agree with it totally. I will then therefore concentrate on the other issue of questions. First off, questions from members of the public. I do think it's a little bit strange that we profess to be democratic, and yet then we say to members of the public, you can't ask us more than one question. Now, I would love to know which of the councillors would happily stand in front of the crowd of the electorate and say that. So I'm very much opposed to that anyway. I don't think too many questions have been asked by members of the public. So let me move on to the point of questions from us. And I understand there has been some concern about the number of questions asked by some members. But this is not the solution. First off, I'd like to bring you to a democratic point. We are all elected on a first past the post basis. That means we're all equal. To say that I am less equal than an independent member, therefore I can't get a whole question asked, I can only get a bit of a question, ask my leader to perhaps let me ask a question, isn't good enough. I've been elected. I have a right to ask questions. And what's stopping me from, for example, leaving my group, putting a question in, wait for the council meeting, rejoin my group? Nothing. So from a practical point of view, it is ridiculous. Now, also, the fact that one person they believe, now if it is one person you're aimed at, and the councillor knows it's him, has upset someone enough for this to take action. Rather, you come to the group of councillors and ask us, what can we do to solve this? You would have got answers. If questions are a problem, tell you what, let's have written answers rather than council officials or cabinet members talking for 15, 20, well, it isn't, sorry, 5, 10 minutes, giving answers, basically taking the floor. There will be councillors who will ask questions under this this amendment, this proposal, that will not get their question asked, answered, and therefore they will not be able to ask a supplementary because they will run out of time. I cannot agree with this. I just think it's creeping to lack of democracy. It's almost as bad as having a multi-location meeting remotely so no members of the public can attend. So thank you, Chair, for this thing, but I'm sure the Labour group will vote en masse and we won't have as much democracy by the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Charles, please.
Thank you, Mayor. What do you have to fear by allowing questions in a supposedly democratic Vale of Glamorgan society? I fail to see the purpose of limiting the questions of the motions, and are we all to be punished because of the abuse of the system by certain individuals? That is what should have been tackled, Chair, and I believe that it could have been tackled. And I'm going to stop there because I don't want to repeat anything that anybody else has said.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Would Councillor Burnett like to come back in? Oh, Councillor Cowp, sorry.
Sorry, I was...
Councillor Perry, I've just seen the hands go up now. Sorry, Councillor Perry next.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the Ian amendment is overshadowing the other amendments, and I don't think they're getting enough attention here at all, unfortunately. As I've said earlier, there was the Local Government and Elections Wells Act, which has tried to increase participation in local government by members of the public, our residents, those people we represent. And this goes directly against that legislation. It goes directly against the Senate, the higher authority, just to shut me up. I know I asked difficult questions. I thought they were simple, but I get really shockingly bad answers, don't I? And sometimes we get referred to meetings that are held in private. Sometimes we get told we've been told things. One of the answers I got was that I'd been told by an officer. I had, because I asked the question, I got it the day before, which was a link to a meeting of some 6 months, 7 months earlier, which was then out of date anyhow. So I've still not got the answer to my question. I still can't answer questions to my residents because I don't get the information. Therefore, if you're not going to answer me directly, and I can't ask questions in meetings, all I can do is go to the press like any other member of the public. Doesn't sound good, does it really? The Putinisation, I'm calling it, of the Vale of Glamorgan Council. Keir Starmer, wake up. So we want to decrease participation, and yet we talk about consultation, not participation, consultation. We've got the RLDP out, and we are making it quite clear we don't want to hear from the public. We want to hear from me, people who actually really care about their communities. Don't want to know. It's all about the cabinet. We won. Was it 40% something that the Labour Party got? And all the power. That's not really democracy either, is it? I might be keen on a different electoral system. You hear cabinet members disappointed to receive a question, but these questions come from residents, the taxpayer. If I'm raising it or another member's raising it, we're raising it on their behalf, and yet we end up getting personal attacks for raising questions that our residents are asking us. Those attacks are not attacks on the actual member asking the question, but on the residents. I don't think the Labour Party quite understand that. The Labour group rarely do scrutiny, and yet the leader says she wants more scrutiny. Oh dear. The proposed Ian amendment is anti-free speech, it's anti-transparency, it's anti-accountability, it's anti-democratic. Yeah, we're going to get less discussion and comment and scrutiny because we're doing away with it. What opportunity do I get to scrutinise the key decision makers on the cabinet? I don't think I get sufficient opportunity to scrutinise the cabinet members who seem to want to act rather like certain people well known in the world. Scrutiny does need to improve. Opportunity to talk and discuss. Now, I'm quite a fan of the online meetings, but there needs to be more talk between members. There needs to be more collaboration between members. Yeah, we need to reach a consensus and end this silliness of, well, I'm Labour, I'm being whipped, I will vote this way, because that's the party line. We're all supposed to be the representatives of our communities, but we're not. You're representing a party when you should be representing the people in your communities. The communities are the people who lose, and hence you see on social media, forget the self-assessment, you see the upset and the outrage. And maybe you get elected next time because that's how the electoral system works. But it's not a true reflection of the feelings of people in our communities.
30 seconds, Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very, very sad state of affairs. We want more democracy. Our Senator wants more democracy. And here we are with an amendment to the Constitution. Am I the only independent member who's actually caused a local authority to change its constitution to try and shut him up because he's asking questions that have not been asked before or answered before? And
time's up, Councillor Perry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lady Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cowp, please.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to say that obviously we're all elected, we're all councillors, and we all have to abide by the code of conduct. We're obviously going to have disagreements, and that's acceptable. But we need to treat each other in a respectful manner, and that means being respectful of people's time as well. And it's been suggested that this may be a problem caused by a small number of councillors, in which case I would say, isn't this a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut? And actually speaking to those people individually and trying to come to an agreement would have been a better solution. I totally disagree with this agreement. But the other thing I want to say is I totally disagree with public members asking questions before councillors. If we look at the voting system, if we look at the percentage of voters across the UK, what we need to do is engage people in the council business. And if they just come into a meeting and hear a roll call, ask their questions and go, they don't actually see what councillors are doing. So I would like to suggest that that should not happen, that councillors should ask the questions. That's what we're here for, to hold the council to account. The public are welcome to come and listen to those questions, or they can be given a time slot or a suggested time slot. But I totally disagree that they should ask questions first, because I think this is an opportunity for the Vale of Glamorgan to engage those people who want to come and ask us questions, to engage with what actually happens in a council meeting and what councillors actually do. So I would definitely urge that. And I'm sorry that the amendments didn't go through. I feel that this is not a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowp. Councillor Hodges, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's just been said online meetings are very good. They certainly have their place, although I must say I've been kicked out 5 times today by the Vale server in this one meeting, so it doesn't always great. We we had the question put earlier by Councillor John about various councillors putting in the same or similar questions. And this is an issue and a problem, and it extends meetings. And it's, well, we've heard political parties at their conference composite things. You know, if it's exactly the same question, it shouldn't be outside the wit of officers, members, whatever, to actually come to an agreement there. What I would say, though, is, and something that perhaps Councillor John missed, is that if different members from different parties are asking the same question, it's obviously an issue of concern, which demands questions asked and answers made. So we must bear that in mind. The other thing is that the suggestion was, if I understand rightly, that if there is more than two motions or whatever, that the mayor might adjudicate. I hope I'm wrong on that, because we certainly have a rule that in our town council in Barry, very sensible rule, that no one councillor can make a decision that affects council. That's the very meaning of anti-democratic. I am really concerned how this council is going to come out looking after this debate, with the attempt to hamper, restrict and constrict debate and everything. And like I said earlier, as well, just to go back to motions, we've had debate tonight. We've had votes tonight. That took a long time, but it also took the time it needed, and it allowed members, and quite a lot of members from all groups, to make their point. If that is restricted or constricted or shortened, this council's got... I'm the longest serving member, continuous member of this council. 29 years in May. I've seen a lot of things in my time. I've never seen this approach since Sean Stringer in 1995 to 1999 to make an absolute despotic attempt to restrict councillors. Please be careful, because we all know how that ended up. Please retain free speech on this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Ewan Goodjohn, please.
Okay, first off, can I be absolutely clear here? I have tried time and time again, as have many other Labour councillors, to hold this cabinet to account on scrutiny committees where it is meant to be done. Time and time again on reports, Labour is the party that brings in more recommendations than any other, brings in more comments than any other, right? It's absolutely clear here. I've put in questions to Cabinet and they have been answered. I've tried to scrutinise, and more than anything, I've had concerns about some of the proposals made, but they have been answered. And reasoning given behind each and every one. Okay. The current system of questions is absurd, and I'm sorry that Councillor Perry feels sidelined, but the current system that has been abused is absurd. There does need to be a change. This is hardly going to some kind of dictatorship in any way, shape, or form. Okay. A 45-minute time limit on motions. Now, I've had concerns, but that has been duly dealt with from reasoning given behind it. The Whittaker system. Now, I was given assurances that group leaders had agreed to this, or there had been some kind of consensus given. Now, when group leaders did not agree with that, I abstained. But the actual motion, the changes to the Constitution, I see no problem with whatsoever, right? Labour has consistently tried to scrutinise this cabinet and the council as a whole because we want the best services for people in this council, okay? And I have tried time and time again. Yeah, it's incredible that it's talked about a Labour group block vote, and I didn't just then. We have free reign. We don't, because we do what is best for our citizens, for the residents of the Vale of Glamorgan, to build homes, to have to meet our legal duties, our statutory requirements. This is what I try to do on a daily basis as a councillor. Okay, that is what we are all trying to do as councillors. Hopefully this will mean a debate which is more robust, more supportive, and one that we've all talked about public engagement, one that's more engaging for the public than this. That's what we're looking for, and I hope that there can be cross-party support for one, but if there cannot, I don't see a problem with these measures myself. But that is the conclusion I have come to, and everyone can vote how they wish, and we're all democratically elected, and we will represent the views of our residents, and whatever the vote comes to, the vote comes to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Councillor Wood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say that I think we should all beware the unintended consequences and outcomes of this change. We've sat here and many people have pointed out the possible unintended outcomes, the possible reduction in people's voices. Asking questions is what asking questions is. It is part of what we have to do. It is part of the responsibility we have to pose the questions, to listen to the answers and go through the process. And I'd much prefer that we maintain the status quo and accept the slight incongruencies of people asking similar questions. If we can't resolve that, there are other ways that we can resolve it by various ways of talking to each other. But I am very wary of changes that will fundamentally change the ability of members to ask questions and raise scrutiny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very disappointed that my recent amendment wasn't passed. That was an opportunity for us to have cross-party consensus and those of no party, bring everybody together and reach a conclusion that suits everybody's needs, which includes the council and the public. However, sadly, those in power in the council have decided to change the constitution without gaining that cross-party consensus. That's very sad. It's very disappointing for democracy. This is a council, and Councillor Hodges talked earlier about the good old days under Sean Stringer, but I've been on the council. This is my third term, and I'd like to think that although I disagree with lots of things brought forward, I try to be constructive, and I try to to work with others across the various parties and committees to reach an outcome which we all want. I'm disappointed that this has been pushed through when I thought I'd made it fairly clear at the meeting that I disagreed with these. I thought it was obvious that that there were alternatives that I thought we could agree upon. For example, perhaps restricting the numbers that individuals could ask so that you don't have people dominating questions in one way. And that would have been the sort of proposal that we could have discussed at a cross-party and no-party group. However, the Labour group and Llantuit First and I think an independent have decided, and I apologise, not all of you maybe, but almost all of you have decided that you want to run the show your way. And that is deeply disappointing, and we'll see what that means, because if you're willing to use your numbers to change the constitution in order to change how meetings operate, in order to change how we scrutinise, in order to change how the public are able to ask questions, how we as council are able to ask questions, and to restrict the time that's available to backbenchers in particular, as well as stymieing backbenchers from parties by preventing them from asking their questions independently, except through the leader. As Councillor Wood just said, we'll see what the unintended consequences of those are. I warned in the meeting that we had against group leaders that that other councils do these things differently. They have monthly meetings. We have only 5 a year, and we are being prevented from doing our job. So I'm very disappointed. I do hope that you reconsider this tonight before we go any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Sivanyanam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have to say I'm incredibly disappointed also at the level of the debate on on this motion this evening. The fact is, scrutiny happens in any event. I think as the debate on the RLDP demonstrated, 28 out of 54 councillors bothered to turn up to briefings to debate the issues in that report. That's where our residents and people that vote for us think we should be, and that's where they expect scrutiny to happen, and that's where it should happen. As far as I'm concerned, very often what the council, full councils are used for, and that was also demonstrated earlier on this evening, is for people to make political gain. And I think that's not what our residents want. They want to see consensus. They want to see us working together. And that has not been demonstrated, certainly this evening. And going forward, I wholeheartedly support this change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sivignano. Councillor Leader, please. Councillor Lisbonette.
Mayor, if I could come in after Councillor Williams just to summarise.
Yes. Yep. Councillor Addy Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader. Quite frustrating. We spent quite a considerable time on this.
You're on mute, Eddie.
Take it out. Apologies. That's my error. I accept that I pressed the button twice rather than blame technology. Right, okay. I've spent some time on this, listening to the debate and discussion, and recognise that considerable time when we've had other important items to discuss. But let's be frank, whatever change we make now, tonight, or whatever, will be taken by any ruling party in the future. So, and plus, I've taken on what Councillor John said. Let's give it a try and see if it makes a difference to our discussion. What I wanted to emphasise for the public is that people have, members have an opportunity to speak to cabinet members during the day, any day of the week, via phone call or email. And I've actually responded to anybody, regardless of their political persuasion. If they've got a particular issue regarding social care and health, I've responded and asked the officer to respond in due course. So I don't think it's a political reason for me to say that what we're agreeing with tonight is a means of, putting shackles on other members. So I just need to say that.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Morgan, please.
Yeah, just picking up from what I'm here. Just picking up from what Councillor Williams said there. I think I've always found in my time on the council that if I raise a question, I can raise a question with a cabinet member or with an officer, and I will get a well-considered reply. I don't see the necessity to air these questions in the public domain if one has had a satisfactory answer. And I would echo and respect the contribution made to this meeting by our youngest councillor tonight, Councillor Goodjohn, who I think summarised things very, very well. And I support this motion entirely. And as Councillor Gwyn-John has said, we can try this. If it doesn't work, this can be brought back to a future council. But we need to do something to make sure that there's an effective use of our council time, that perhaps we can spend more time in debate rather than listening to answers to questions we haven't raised. If there is a difficulty in the way that motions are answered, then somebody can raise a motion to have that re-examined. But I think what we can do now is just to try it and see, and that's my view on it. I've never really followed from the time I've been on the council, which is not that long, but I'm in my second term. And when I first encountered this whole question system, it seemed to be carefully geared in many cases that somebody would ask a very vague question to get to get on their feet and then back it up with some kind of ambush on a cabinet member, which I thought was deplorable, and it just extended the time of meetings unnecessarily. This is not an attack on democracy. This is not anything the way it's been described tonight. We still have our democratic process. We still have scrutiny, and that is where these things needs to be addressed. So I'm an independent member. I really take exception to the remarks about this council being Putin-esque. I mean, that's a rude thing to say, and it's not acceptable in the public domain. And people do use the public domain to say things which are simply not acceptable. And I echo what another councillor said earlier, we need to learn respect for one another and the way we do our dealings at these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Johnson, is that a point of order?
It's a point of clarification, Mayor, if I may, which is just very briefly that, of course, the purpose of asking questions at full council is so that the record is available for other councillors and for the public, whereas any private email to a cabinet member would not be available in such a manner. And equally that members are not responsible for the items on the agenda of scrutiny meetings, so cannot ordinarily comment on those things and raise things themselves, which is again a part of the purpose of questions at full council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Leader, please. Councillor Liz Burnett.
Thank you, Mayor. It's actually been a disappointing discussion this evening.
Leader.
And I was
Just like
talking
we'll
I was talking so eloquently then. I don't need comments, Councillor Hodges. I was just going to say it's been so disappointing this evening. You know, when the monitoring officer actually called a meeting of leaders to discuss an issue, my recollection, I know that Councillor Johnson was against a restriction on one question per member, but the rest is not my recollection of the content of that meeting. It's Councillor Carroll's comments are not my recollection of that meeting, and when the monitoring officer pulled together the report as a result of the comments on that meeting, I was surprised to hear this. I was surprised actually to hear members saying that they don't think that it's a good idea to put public questions at the front of the agenda to stop them having to wait for hours and hours. And maybe they'll come back and watch another one. Maybe they'll come back and ask another question. If they get, you know, if they actually feel that they've been able to participate in a similar way as scrutiny. And talking about scrutiny, Councillor Carroll talked about Cabinet ignoring scrutiny. Now, actually, you'd remember when we reported the annual scrutiny report to this council, it was amended because the figures were incorrect. And actually, Cabinet had not ignored one single recommendation from scrutiny. It was that quite a number were noted because scrutiny, their recommendation back to Cabinet is quite often, can you just consider what we've talked about without an actual recommendation, so specific recommendation. So in terms of the actual specific recommendations, when it was checked, we did not actually refuse any. We did actually note one the other day, but that was because a recommendation was made that was already in the report. So I was disappointed in that. I was disappointed that actually the report hasn't been fully read. And I clarified when we were talking about the amendment, and I'll clarify again. In terms of the order of the motions, and, you know, if there are more than two motions, I mean, I can't remember when there were last more than two motions. The Mayor, in consultation with the relevant leaders. So if there was no motion from the Labour group, I would not be involved in that discussion. And the order of questions, once they're published, the whole list of questions, group leaders would actually decide what the order of those questions was, and it would be notified about a day before full council. So you can actually look and say, well, actually, there's 3 people asking that. We'll put that a bit lower down the list, or maybe it's not such a priority. So, you know, a day before that leaders can do that. Now, I've already told my group that if that was the case, I'd actually be taking our questions to a group meeting and we would decide between us. That's up to group leaders what they would want to do. And similarly, you would discuss motions. But the other thing that I would mention is that legally, group leaders are responsible for the behaviour of their members. So you should know what questions they're putting in. And this is just actually firming that up. So I stand by this. I would suggest that after a period, it's put onto the work programme for Democratic Services Committee and is reviewed, and we'll see what happens. So I would confirm that I move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. We'll now go to the vote. I'll ask the Chief Executive to take the vote, please. We are... Oh, sorry. Councillor Johnson, Councillor... Sorry.
I don't know if Councillor Carroll was going to do the same thing, but I was just going to confirm we're having a recorded vote on this.
6 members, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Please. Point of order, Chairman.
Yes,
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
The suggestion was there that after a certain time, a trial period, it would go to Democratic Services. But you had an issue, Leader, with it going to Democratic Services before we suck it and see. So I'm struggling to see. Are you suggesting that we improve, expand the regis of the Democratic Services Committee?
Would you like me to answer that, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Democratic Services Committee manage their own work programme. It would be after a reasonable time for Democratic Services, once with the experience of it working in practice, could choose to review. That's complete. They are autonomous. They can choose to do a review at whatever time.
If I can just come back, I think you're making it up as you go along, Leader.
Councillor Johnson, please.
I just want some clarification on this, because I'm not sure that was quite a sunset clause, was it? And I believe the monitoring officer earlier said that I was outside the terms of reference for the Democratic Services Committee, which is why there wasn't to be a working party of that committee to discuss this in my amendment, but it was said to be a cross-party working group. So I think a bit of clarification or an actual amendment to that end would be helpful, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Could I ask the monitor officer to come in, please?
As clarified earlier, there would be a need for an amendment to the terms of reference for Democratic Services Committee to factor that into their terms of reference, and of course that's a matter that could be considered at a future council meeting.
Thank you, monitor officer. I think we should go for the vote now.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yes, it'll be on the amendments to the council, the reports of the amendments to the council constitutions with the two recommendations.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask members in turn if they agree with the recommendations as set out in the body of the report, or if they are against those recommendations, or if they abstain. So we'll start with Councillor Anne Asprey, please.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Julia Eviett.
For.
Councillor Gareth Ball.
For.
Councillor Rhiannon Birch.
For.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks.
For.
Councillor Gillian Bruce.
Against.
Councillor Ian Buckley.
For.
Councillor Liz Burnett.
For.
Councillor Samantha Campbell.
Against.
Councillor George Carroll.
Against.
Councillor Charles Champion.
Against.
Councillor Janice Charles.
Against.
Councillor Millie Collins.
Against.
Councillor Marianne Cowp.
Sorry, against.
Councillor Pamela Drake.
For.
Councillor Vince Driscoll.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Ernest.
Against.
Councillor Chris Franks.
For. No, sorry, against.
Too late.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
Too late.
Councillor Wendy Gilligan.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
For.
Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
For.
Councillor Stephen Haynes.
Against.
Councillor Howard Hamilton.
For.
Councillor Sally Hanks.
For.
Councillor William Hennessy.
Against.
Councillor Nick Hodges.
Against.
Councillor Mark Cooper.
An Erbyn against.
Councillor Catherine Iannucci.
For.
Councillor Gwyn John.
For.
Councillor Ian Johnson.
An Erbyn against.
Councillor Susan Lloyd Selby.
For.
Councillor Belinda Lovelock Edwards.
For.
Councillor Julie Lynch Wilson.
For.
Councillor Kevin Marney.
Against.
Councillor Michael Morgan.
For.
Councillor Jane Norman.
For.
Councillor Helen Payne.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Elliot Penn.
For.
Councillor Sandra Perks.
For.
Councillor Ian Perry.
Oh, just thinking what I could do productively. Yeah, against.
Councillor Joanna Prothero.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Ruba Sivinianem.
For the recommendations.
Councillor Caris Stallard. Councillor Stallard. Okay, I'll come back. Councillor Neil Thomas.
For.
Councillor Rhys Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
For.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
For.
Councillor Nicholas Wood.
Against.
And I'll come back to Councillor Caris Stallard, please.
Councillor Stallard appears to have dropped off the list of attendees.
Okay, I make that 28 in favour of the recommendation and 20 against.
I agree.
Just to say, Rob, that
Okay.
Caris Stallard's battery had died, which is why she dropped out.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the vote, Mayor, and the vote is carried.
I think you're on mute, Mayor.
You're muted, Mayor.
I think it's because I had a cough earlier on and I didn't put it back on. Thank you all, and for a really lively evening and a good discussion. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night, Mayor.